Chapter 1154. After the two of them fooled around for a while, Jojo suddenly thought of something and said with a faint smile, "You took a huge risk to sneak in here this time to save your lover, right?" Song Qing-shu said frankly, "That's right. After all, I owe her a favor. I was worried that she would be kissed by a wolf, so I snuck in. I didn't expect to meet you here. What a pleasant surprise." "A pleasant surprise?" Zhou Zhiruo chuckled. "I think you're disappointed. What nonsense are you talking about? Is there a need to be jealous?" Song Qing-shu looked gloomy. "Shouldn't I be jealous when my husband is fooling around with another married woman?" Zhou Zhiruo snorted. "Get that woman here." Song Qing-shu was dumbfounded and said angrily, "We're on the island of heroes now, so we should be careful." The corners of Zhou Zhiruo's lips curled up. "Why? Do you think I'm looking for trouble with her?" Song Qing-shu smiled awkwardly and did not answer. However, his expression said it all. "Don't worry, I know what's important." Zhou Zhiruo reached out and pinched him. "I asked her to come here to help you force the poison out." "Huh? Force the poison out?" Song Qing-shu could not react for a moment. "Yes, didn't you say that you wanted to use her to temporarily suppress the poison of the golden ripple flower so that you can use your vital qi to force the poison out?" Zhou Zhiruo answered calmly. That's not very good." Song Qing-shu's tone was a little weak. Previously, when he was in bed with Qi Fong, he said that he was forcing the poison out, but in reality, it was a very romantic thing. Now that he was really in front of his wife, even with his thick skin, he could not bring himself to do it. "What's not good about it?" Zhou Zhiruo said quickly. "Your safety is the first priority. Right now, the most important thing is to help you recover your strength. Only then can I be completely at ease. Otherwise, if your identity is exposed and something happens to you on this island, what do you want Agio, Qing and me to do?" Song Qing-shu was moved and couldn't help but ask, "Aren't you jealous?" "Yes, of course." Zhou Zhiruo glared at him fiercely. "I'll deal with you slowly in the future, but if something happens to you here, I won't be able to be jealous even if I wanted to." Seeing that Song Qing-shu was still hesitating, Zhou Zhiruo continued, "Isn't that young woman your benefactor? Aren't you worried that she will be bullied by the other people on this island?" Song Qing-shu was startled. In the beginning, Qi Fong was prepared to be offered to this young master in embroidered gown, so naturally, no one dared to touch her. But now, the young master in embroidered gown had clearly chosen Zhou Zhiruo. If the servants of the Isle of Heroes thought that the young master in embroidered gown did not fancy Qi Fong and dealt with her in private, it would be terrible. "I'll immediately send someone to find her." Song Qing-shu couldn't sit still any longer. He hurriedly got up and went out to order the servants outside the courtyard. Looking at her husband's back, Zhou Zhiruo faintly sighed. As a woman, how could she not mind this kind of thing? However, their relationship as husband and wife was a little special. In the beginning, they were husband and wife in name, but they were not husband and wife. Later, because of a misunderstanding, they became enemies. So when she found out that her husband was fooling around outside, she didn't feel the slightest bit moved. At that time, she only wanted to kill Song Qing-shu to avenge her innocence. Later, when she failed to avenge her husband, she was forced to sleep with him. This happened a few times. Maybe it was Stockholm Syndrome, but Zhou Zhiruo found that she gradually developed feelings for this man. She had been trying to avoid this feeling, but when she heard the fake news that Song Qing-shu failed to assassinate Kangxi and was turned into ashes, the suppressed feelings in her heart completely exploded. She even disregarded the risk and entered the palace alone to assassinate him. Of course, the ending was a happy one. However, she was surprised to find that her husband also had a few outstanding women who were deeply in love with him. After all, they were all willing to enter the palace to avenge him. Zhou Zhiruo was also very moved. Moreover, at that time, the relationship between her and Song Qing-shu was a little strange. It was completely different from a normal married couple. So, she couldn't put on the airs of a legal wife to drive away her husband's women. In this way, she maintained a strange balance with the other women. Later, she accompanied her husband through a narrow escape from death. Zhou Zhiruo finally realized that those women had become an important part of her husband's life. if she insisted on putting on the airs of a legal wife to drive away those women. It was hard to say who would have the last laugh in the future. In addition, she had experienced trials and tribulations with Ajio, Xia Qingqing, and the others. They had more or less developed some friendship. Zhou Zhuo struggled in her heart for a long time, but in the end, she chose to remain silent. In the end, Zhou Zhuo was a slightly two-faced woman. When she realized that as Song Qingshu became more and more outstanding, more women would appear by his side in the future. Since it was a freak combination of factors that made it impossible for her to monopolize her husband, she began to think about how to maximize her own interests. Compared to those other women, she had a natural advantage. She was Song Qingshu's first official wife. Since she could not monopolize her husband, she would definitely not give up the position of legal wife to others. However, she also knew that it was not up to her own will whether or not she could sit firmly in this position. When she saw how powerful the forces behind Ajio, Dongfang Muxue, and Xia Qingqing were, and how each of them had provided great help to Song Qingshu in his quest for hegemony, she felt a deep sense of danger. That was why she decided to infiltrate the White Lotus Society and attempt to use her father's connections to control the White Lotus Society. With this generous gift as a dowry, she would have enough confidence to socialize with other women in the imperial harem in the future. However, all of this was because she treated Ajio, Dongfang Muxue, and Xia Qingqing as opponents of the same level. As for women like Qi Fong, she actually did not care about them at all. Qi Fong was a married woman. Her status meant that she and Song Qingshu would only have a fleeting relationship. Zhou Zhuo could clearly see the pros and cons of this situation. Rather than showing her jealous side for this kind of woman, she would rather take advantage of the situation and sell out her husband. Of course, if the other party was a woman like Zhao Min, she would definitely not be as easy to talk to as she was now. Not long after, a servant of the Isle of Heroes led a beautiful young woman into the room. Then, he tactfully left and closed the door. As she looked at the graceful young woman in front of her, Zhou Zhuo snorted inwardly. This scoundrel's standards are really high. Every time he hooks up with an extremely outstanding woman, she thought. Qi Fong's hands were trembling nervously in her sleeves. The servant who brought her here told her that she would be serving an extremely distinguished guest tonight. At the same time, he also placed a restriction on her body. Now, she could be said to have no ability to resist at all. She could only allow herself to be taken advantage of by others. These days, she had been hoping that Song Qingshu would come and save her. However, as the days passed by, he still did not appear. In the end, she became a little disheartened. After all, she knew that Song Qingshu was currently suffering from a highly toxic poison. It would be a problem for him to even protect himself. However, there were so many magical stories about him circulating in the boudoir circle of the noble ladies in Lin City. Thus, she always held on to a glimmer of hope. Unfortunately, this glimmer of hope was finally shattered. She had already been taken into another man's room. One could imagine what would happen next. Chapter 1155. Seeing Qi Fong standing there timidly, Zhou Zhuo could not help but smile and say, "Sister, you are really beautiful." Hearing this, Qi Fong had a strange look on her face. She was the mother of a child, but Zhou Zhuo looked more like a young girl. Shouldn't she call her sister? She did not know that Zhou Zhuo was now the wife of the child, so she naturally called her sister. "Don't be afraid. Come and sit here." Feeling her nervousness, Zhou Zhuo comforted her gently. Qi Fong was destined to not be a competitor, so she could take this opportunity to win her over to her side. It would be great for her to wave the flag for her in the future. Qi Fong did not know what was going on, so she sat down next to Zhou Zhuo in confusion. As soon as she sat down, she saw a man in luxurious clothes looking at her with a faint smile. She was so scared that she hurriedly stood up and looked at him warily. For the past few days, someone had been nagging her to know that the reason why the people of the Isle of Heroes provided her with good food and drinks was so that she could serve the man in front of her. Seeing Qi Fong's frightened look, Song Qingshu suddenly became mischievous. He imitated the tone of the man in luxurious clothes and said, Little lady, don't be afraid. Stay by my side, and I promise that no one will dare to bully you. Seeing him reach out to hug her, Chi Fong was so scared that her face turned pale. She hurriedly took a few steps back and said, Don't come near me. Song Qingshu smiled and said, Little lady, this house is only so big. Where can you run to? Zhou Zhao glared at him and said, All right, don't scare her. I'm just trying to liven up the atmosphere. Song Qingshu smiled embarrassedly and unknowingly returned to his original voice. You? Hearing that familiar voice, Chi Fong looked at him in bewilderment. Song Qingshu took off his mask and smiled at her. Madam, you have suffered a lot recently. Chi Fong exclaimed and hurriedly covered her mouth. Her big eyes were full of disbelief. After a long time, she said in a trembling voice, Is it really you? Song Qingshu rushed forward and held her in his arms. Madam, do you believe me now? The two of them had been in the same room on the ship for the past few days. Chi Fong was already familiar with each other's aura. Being in such close contact, it was indeed that familiar feeling. She couldn't help but become excited. You really came to save me. Feeling her trembling body, Song Qingshu could imagine how much pressure and suffering she had been under. He patted her shoulder and said, It's all in the past. It's all in the past. Ahem, the two of them hugged each other and confided in each other. Zhou Zhao, who was at the side, could not stand it anymore and coughed lightly. Madam, Fong, and Madam, Song said. Song, Fong could not help but, she is. Song Qingshu was also troubled. He did not know how to introduce her. He hesitated for a moment, then decided to tell the truth. She is my wife, Zhou Zhao, the current sect leader of a Mei sect. What? Chi Fong cried out in alarm and hurriedly pushed him away. Her face was so red that it seemed as if blood was about to drip out. It was fine that she had an ambiguous relationship with someone else's husband, but in the end, the person in question was right beside her. At this moment, she was extremely embarrassed and wished that there was a hole in the ground to hide in. Zhou Zhao smiled and stepped forward to hold her hand. I know what kind of person Qingshu is. He must have taken the initiative to bully you. Sister, you don't have to be too restrained. Anyway, we are a family now. Chi Fong almost fainted. She thought that she was still a married woman with a baby at home. How could they become a family? She felt that entering this room was the most terrible thing. But now, she thought that she might as well face that man alone. Looking at Zhou Zhao and Chi Fong whispering to each other, Song Qingshu could not help but sigh at the benefits of traveling through time. In the society of his previous life, when a wife and a mistress met, there would be a bloodbath. It would not be as harmonious as it was now. In his mind, Song Qingshu imagined the blissful days of his harem of 3,000 beauties. He was a little dazed. What are you thinking about? Why are you smiling so happily? After some time, he heard Zhou Zhirua's voice. No, nothing. Song Qingshu came back to his senses and wiped the saliva from the corner of his mouth. He saw Chi Fong standing behind Zhou Zhao with a red face. She was quiet like a shy quail. What did you say to her? Song Qingshu asked curiously. You don't have to worry about women. Zhou Zhao rolled her eyes at him and urged, Hurry up and start expelling the poison. We have to hurry. Now. Song Qingshu was shocked. He subconsciously glanced at Chi Fong, only to see her turn her head away. Her fair neck was gradually dyed with a layer of pink. Don't look at her. Big Sister Chi has already agreed. Do you really need her to take the initiative to invite you? Just now, the two of them had talked about something. Now, they had started to address each other as sisters. After understanding Chi Fong's situation, Zhou Zhao took the initiative to call her big sister, which made Chi Fong feel very embarrassed. Zhao, I suddenly have a whole new level of respect for you. Song Qingshu clicked his tongue in wonder. After all, he had no idea how the other party managed to convince Chi Fong to cooperate with him willingly in such a short time. I have many benefits that you don't know about. The corners of Zhou Zhirua's lips curled up slightly. She was obviously a little proud. Hurry up and expel the poison. Don't waste time. She held Chi Fong's hand with her left hand and held Song Qingshu's hand with her right. She brought them to the bed. Looking at the messy bedding on the bed and the lingering smell of sex in the air, Zhou Zhiruo's beautiful face flashed with a trace of embarrassment. She hurriedly tidied up the bed sheets and said to Qi Fong, "It's a little messy here. Don't mind it, sister." Qi Fong was too embarrassed to say anything. She could only nod softly. Zhou Zhiruo also felt that the atmosphere was a little strange. She hurriedly said, "I'll go out first. I won't disturb you." Before leaving, she was very considerate and put down the curtain on the bed. Only the two of them were left on the bed. Song Qingshu leaned over Qi Fong and said, "What did she say to you just now?" "I'm not telling you." Qi Fong pursed her lips. "You, hurry up and start expelling the poison." Seeing her shy look, Song Qingshu couldn't help but feel his heart skip a beat. He reached out to untie her clothes. Especially when he thought that his wife was still outside, he suddenly found that his heart was beating a little fast. After about 5 minutes, Qi Fong blushed and pushed him away. While tidying up her clothes, she said, "It's almost enough. You take your time expelling the poison. I'll go find Sister Zhou." After saying that, she ignored his urging and ran out without looking back, blushing. Song Qingshu smiled slightly. Feeling the warmth in his abdomen, he began to exercise. Zhou Zhuo, who was sitting on a stool not far away, pricked up her ears to listen to the movement inside. Seeing Qi Fong come out with a red face, she hurriedly pretended to see her and said, "Ah, sister, you're out so soon?" Qi Fong gently nodded. She thought to herself, "With you the wife outside, how can I continue to stay inside?" Without Song Qingshu as a lubricant in the middle, Zhou Zhiruo felt a little embarrassed to face Qi Fong alone. However, she had always been quick-witted and quickly found a topic. "Sister, I want to ask you about giving birth." Thinking of her lovely daughter, Qi Fong felt a trace of sweetness in her heart. The two women whispered, and the atmosphere became more and more harmonious. Chapter 1156. Hearing the noise outside, Qi Fong's face suddenly changed. She still remembered the scene of Zhang San and Li Si slaughtering the people on the ship and bringing her here. Zhou Zhiruo's face was also solemn. During the days she spent on the Island of Heroes, she had a general understanding of the martial arts of the two envoys. She was not afraid of one of them, but she would definitely lose if she had to face two of them. However, there were dozens of such envoys on the island. Song Qingshu, who was forcing the poison out of the bed, heard the noise and walked out. He signaled the two women not to panic and let them go to the bed first. After all, if they came in and saw the two women sitting in the room, they would inevitably be suspicious. Qi Fong was still a little hesitant with a red face, but Zhou Zhuo was intelligent and instantly understood her husband's meaning. She pulled Qi Fong and shrunk into the quilt, revealing only two beautiful faces. Song Qingshu secretly sighed. Zhiruo's Qinggong had improved a bit after not seeing her for a while. After confirming that there was no problem with the mask on his face, Song Qingshu also jumped on the bed and lay between the two women. He cleared his throat and said to the door, "I won't see you. I'm busy." After years of training, he had already mastered the skill of disguising himself. If he wanted to disguise himself as another person, in addition to having the same figure and appearance, his character, habits, and speaking style must also be the same. Otherwise, it would be easy for someone to see through his disguise. Putting himself in the young master's shoes, if there was no accident, he would be intoxicated by the two beauties' gentleness. Moreover, he was the most distinguished guest on the island. How could he be willing to see Zhang San and Li Si at such a critical moment? Who knew that just as Song Qingshu finished speaking, the door would be skillfully pushed open by someone outside. Zhang San and Li Si walked in, their eyes sweeping around like lightning. Finally, their gaze landed on the bed where the three of them were. Song Qingshu's expression suddenly changed. "Who let you in?" Zhang San chuckled and said, "Young master, please don't mind us. We heard that there was an assassin here just a moment ago, so we specifically came to take a look. After all, young master is an honored guest of our island. If something happens to you, us two brothers wouldn't be able to bear the consequences." Song Qingshu impatiently waved his hand. "Now you've seen it, right? Hurry up and leave. Don't disturb this young master. Zhang San's line of sight fell on him, and he said with a thoughtful smile, "These two are both great beauties. Young master's current physical condition seems to be very good." Song Qingshu's heart skipped a beat. Why did he seem to be implying something in his words? It seemed like he was trying to test whether or not he was injured. But how did he know that the young master in luxurious gown had been injured by the assassin? Only he and Zhou Zhiruan knew about the entire assassination. Song Qingshu hesitated, but in the end he laughed out loud. This young master is as vigorous as a dragon and as fierce as a tiger. Not to mention 2 great beauties. Even if 20 great beauties came together, why would I be afraid? Zhou Zhiruo and Qi Fong buried their heads next to him. Hearing his words, Qi Fong's face flushed red, but Zhou Zhiruo secretly pinched his waist. Song Qingshu sucked in a breath of cold air. Looking at Zhou Zhiruo's expression that seemed to be smiling, yet not smiling, he couldn't help but smile bitterly. Wasn't he just putting on an act? It's good to be young. Zhang San smiled insincerely and sighed. When you're young, you don't know the value of youth. When you're old, your tears will be in vain. Li Si suddenly coldly interrupted. Song Qingshu's expression suddenly became very interesting. He didn't expect that this Li Si, who was usually serious in speech and manner, was actually an old coquettish man. If there's nothing else, then quickly leave. Song Qingshu was also worried that if they stayed too long, they would see through his act, so he hurriedly chased them away. Who knew that the 2 of them wouldn't move? Zhang San then said, "Originally, we brothers were worried that young master's body was unwell, so we planned to stop our homework. Since young master's body is fine, then please leave." Homework? Song Qingshu frowned. How would he know what homework? If he went with them now, wouldn't he be exposed? No. This young master has suffered today and needs a good rest. Song Qingshu deliberately covered his forehead as he spoke. Zhang Sen laughed mischievously. Before Island Master left, he repeatedly reminded us that we must urge young master to go to the stone room to comprehend at this time every day. He must not slack off for even a day. Song Qingshu was overjoyed. He was worried about how to enter the last stone room. He didn't expect that the opportunity would come knocking on his door. Although Zhang San didn't say which stone room he wanted him to go to, there were many people in the other stone rooms, neglecting to eat and sleep to comprehend at any time. This young master in embroidered clothing had such a distinguished status that he presumably wouldn't squeeze in with those people. Thus, the last stone room was the most likely. Seeing that he didn't say anything, Zhang Sen laughed and added, "There's an ancient saying that beautiful women are the source of trouble. It seems that it was these 2 women who caused young master to neglect his studies. This subordinate will take them away and execute them." Although he was smiling as he spoke, when he finished speaking, the temperature of the entire room seemed to drop by several degrees. "You dare!" Song Qingshu was immediately angered. Then, he put on a dejected expression. "I'll go with you. Young master really knows what's important. This way, please." Zhang San and Li Si took a step back and made an inviting gesture. "Wait a moment. I'll change my clothes first." Song Qingshu put down the curtain next to the bed and whispered to the 2 women, "I'll go with them to take a look. You 2 stay here and don't go anywhere. Just say that it's my idea. If something unexpected happens, Zhiruo, you take Qi Fong directly to the beach pier. I'll meet up with you as soon as I hear the commotion. How about we take the opportunity to attack now? If we catch them off guard, it shouldn't be difficult to restrain Zhang San and Li Si. After all, Zhou Zhiruo was also a person who had won first place in the lion slaughtering convention." Her tone faintly carried a trace of eagerness. Song Qingshu shook his head. "There are too many experts on this island. If they are alarmed, even if you and I join hands, we won't be able to protect ourselves. Let's act according to the original plan. Moreover, going to the stone room this time is a lucky chance. Perhaps I can find a way to cure the poison in my body." Only then did Zhou Zhiruo nod reluctantly. She tidied his collar and said softly, "Then you must be careful." Song Qingshu smiled and kissed the 2 women's cheeks before leaving. Then, without waiting for them to react, he jumped out and said to Zhang San and Li Si, "Let's go." "Young master," This way, please. Not long after, the footsteps of the three people were getting farther and farther away. Qifeng covered the place where she was kissed. Her face was smeared with rouge. She said somewhat awkwardly, "Song, your husband's behavior is really unexpected." Zhou Zhuo was also annoyed and amused. That bastard has always been bold in his lust. Following behind Zhang San and Li Si, Song Qingshu asked tentatively, "To what extent have you two comprehended the things in the stone room?" Chapter 11:57. The reason why Song Qingshu asked this question was because he wanted to find out how much the people of the Isle of Heroes had comprehended the supreme mystery scripture. This would give him a rough estimate of the overall strength of the Isle of Heroes. However, he did not expect that his question would make the other party suspicious. I wasn't interested in it before, but this time, someone came to assassinate me. If I hadn't snatched the assassin's killer move, I would have been dead already. So, I think it's better to learn some martial arts to protect myself. Otherwise, if I die young, I won't have the chance to meet so many beauties in the world. Song Qingshu's reaction was also very fast. He calmly found an excuse, and at the same time, he cursed the young master in embroidered clothes half to death in his heart. This bastard had a good appearance, but in the end, he was ignorant and incompetent, and almost exposed himself. So that's how it is. It seems that this assassination is not entirely a bad thing. If the Island Master knew what you think, he would be pleased. Zhang San laughed. Song Qingshu smiled, but he was curious about the relationship between the Island Master and this young man in luxurious clothes. From their tone, it seemed that they had a special relationship. Could it be that this young man in luxurious clothes was the illegitimate son of the Island Master? He wondered if it was the Dragon Island Master or the Wood Island Master. "We are here. Young Master, you can go in by yourself. It is not convenient for us to go in." Song Qingshu's mind was filled with thoughts when he heard Zhang San's voice. Song Qingshu raised his head and saw that he was already outside a stone room. Looking around, it was obvious that this was the last stone room that he had been unable to enter. It seems that this stone room is for the Island Master's use. No one else is qualified to enter. No wonder I was rejected. Song Qingshu nodded and suddenly raised his voice. "This time, I will definitely learn the martial arts inside in one go. Young Master, you are naturally smart. You will definitely learn something." Zhang San's face was full of smiles, but he was sneering inside. Even the two Island Masters who had been thinking about it for so many years did not dare to say that they could comprehend 1/10 of it. You, a playboy, can only go in and look at the book. Seeing that they really stayed outside the door, Song Qingshu immediately felt relieved and quietly walked into the stone room. After passing through a long tunnel, the space in front of them suddenly widened, and a space about the size of a basketball court appeared in front of them. Noticing that there were two cushions on a nearby wall, Song Qingshu guessed that this should be where the two Island Masters of Dragonwood and Dragonwood cultivated. Raising his head, he saw that there was indeed a smooth stone wall in front of the cushions. The stone wall was densely covered in words. It was different from the other 23 stone rooms. Those stone rooms had pictures and words, but this stone room only had words. Song Qingshu claimed to be a genius who was proficient in Chinese, English, Japanese, Korean, and French. If he knew Yammeat, and a hassle, and stupid pig, he still couldn't recognize a single word on the stone wall. It really is tadpole writing. Song Qingshu had thought that he was at least a bit better than Sherpa Tian, but he didn't expect that he would still become illiterate on this stone wall. Helplessly, Song Qingshu could only follow Sher Potion's stupid method in the original work and start from the strokes of each word. He saw that each stroke of the words seemed to have turned into tadpoles wriggling on the wall. But if he focused on one stroke, the tadpoles would stop moving. Looking closely at the shape of each tadpole, he saw that there were countless tadpoles either jumping up or down in different postures. It was very interesting. These tadpoles should be related to inner breath. Song Qingshu's cultivation was very high now, so he could see the key point at a glance. He looked for a long time and suddenly felt the inner breath on the Jiang acupoint on his back jump. When he looked at another tadpole, the Xianshu acupoint on his back jumped again. However, The inner breath from the Jiang acupoint to the Xianshu acupoint could not be connected. He turned to look at the third tadpole, but there was no movement. Song Qingshu couldn't help but be overjoyed. It should be known that these meridians in his body had been silent for a long time because of the golden ripple flower. Now that he looked at these tadpoles, the acupoints actually showed signs of loosening. If he could connect all the inner breath routes in his body, he wouldn't need to rely on milk to recover his power. Song Qingshu's spirit was lifted. He looked at the tadpoles one by one, and the corresponding acupoints on his body began to jump violently. There were thousands of small tadpoles drawn on the wall. Sometimes, by chance, the inner breath of two acupoints would be connected together, and he would feel comfortable all over. Song Qingshu was looking for suitable tadpoles on his own, trying to connect the inner breath of all the acupoints. Suddenly, he spat out a mouthful of golden blood. Oh no! Song Qingshu's expression immediately turned ugly. Perhaps the acupoints in his body had started to jump, and it had stimulated the poison of the golden ripple flower in his body, causing it to explode at this critical moment. Song Qingshu hurriedly tried to circulate his power to temporarily suppress the poison, but the inner qi in his body was not connected. They were only fighting separately in each acupoint, and very soon, he was forced to retreat by the fierce poison. This can't go on. Song Qingshu tried to stand up and walk out the door, wanting to return to Qi Fong and see if he could temporarily suppress the poison with her help. Who knew that as soon as he stood up, he would feel his legs go numb, and his whole body would fall back onto the cattail hassock. At this critical moment, Song Qingshu couldn't care less about whether or not he would arouse suspicion. He was just about to open his mouth and call out to Zhang San and Li Si, but who knew that when he opened his mouth, no sound would come out. The familiar feeling of numbness came again, and Song Qingshu could not help but smile bitterly. He didn't expect that extreme joy would turn into sorrow. If it weren't for his greed for the Taishan Sutra, the dormant golden ripple flower in his body would not have exploded like this, and he would not be on the verge of death again. Am I going to die here, quietly? Song Qingshu suddenly felt a little lost, but when he thought of Zhou Zhuo, who was still waiting for him to return, and many of his female friends, he immediately pulled himself together. No, I can't give up like this. But what else could he do if he didn't give up? Previously, he had suffered greatly from the golden ripple flower, and he had tried all kinds of methods. If it weren't for Xiao Long new coincidentally appearing with the dragon pill of piercing rhinoceros, he would have died a long time ago. Right now, this stone room was a forbidden area of the Isle of Heroes. No one would appear, and no one would be able to help him. Right now, he could only rely on himself. Song Qingshu bit his lips, trying to wake himself up. Perhaps it was because he was in a life and death situation, but his thoughts were a little faster than usual. He had already tried all the methods he could think of, so there was no need to waste any more time. Right now, his only hope was the Taishan Sutra on the stone wall. He didn't dare to be careless, and once again focused his mind to observe the movement of each tadpole. Unfortunately, not long after he started, he became dispirited. There were countless tadpoles on the stone wall. It was not easy to link hundreds of acupoints in one's body into one. In the original work, the second island master or dragon would island studied it for his entire life, but he still couldn't understand it. Later on, Shur Patian, who had been using cheats, didn't go astray, but even so, it took him more than 3 months to link all the acupoints in his body. Even if Song Qingshu's knowledge and cultivation were much higher than that slow kid's, he might not need that much time. However, there were so many tadpoles, and it would take at least half a month to link all of them. But where did Song Qingshu have that much time? Chapter 1158. Letting go of the obsession in his heart, Song Qingshu laid on the ground and reminisced about his rebirth. Although it wasn't a long time, it was much more exciting than his previous life. Unfortunately, the more exciting it was, the more regretful he felt. He was about to stand at the top of this world, but he suddenly failed miserably, especially those women who loved him deeply. Thinking about their sadness after his death, Song Qingshu's heart was in a mess. Inadvertently looking at the stone wall, Song Qingshu felt as if the words on the wall were circling and dancing, and he couldn't help but feel dizzy. At first, Song Qingshu thought it was because of the poison, but he quickly realized that it was indeed the words that were moving. Perhaps it was because he was on the verge of death. Song Qingshu suddenly thought of a question. Other people who transmigrated were doing well. Why did he have to suffer so much? After thinking about it, he realized that other people who transmigrated often had a golden finger, but didn't he? Any martial art, as long as he read it once or listened to it once, he would be able to understand it immediately. It was the same for the scripture of divine reflection, the traceless sand step, the five-mountain godly sword. Why didn't it work this time? Song Qingshu immediately realized that the main reason was that he was following the original work too blindly. In the original work, Shi Patian learned the Supreme Mystery Sutra through the tadpole method, so he subconsciously used the same method. However, the method that was suitable for Shi Patian might not be suitable for him. Plus, he didn't understand the tadpole language, so he subconsciously rejected himself and brought it into Shi Potion's perspective in the original work. Perhaps to other people, because they didn't understand the tadpole language, they indeed couldn't understand the martial art. However, he was different. As long as he knew the secret, he would be able to learn it. His previous experience had already proved that he could learn the martial art by reading it once or listening to it once. Then what about memorizing the secret? Although he didn't understand the tadpole language now, he could rely on his powerful memory to memorize the entire tadpole language. Although he didn't understand the meaning of every word and didn't know the pronunciation of every word, it wasn't hard to memorize the shape of every word. Although he wasn't sure if this would work, with Song Qingshu's current situation, he had no choice but to make a last attempt. Even though he knew that the chances were slim, Song Qingshu still did not give up on the last glimmer of hope. Firstly, he had been reborn, so his mentality was much stronger than that of ordinary people. Secondly, when he thought of the many beauties waiting for his safe return, he could not choose to give up. The numbness brought about by the golden ripple flower's poison had already gradually spread throughout his body. Song Qingshu knew that there was no time to lose. He immediately eliminated all distracting thoughts and concentrated on imprinting all the words on the stone wall into his mind. He no longer struggled with the meaning of each tadpole character, nor did he struggle with which acupoints and which direction of chi flow the tadpoles corresponded to. He was purely memorizing the shape of each character, purely memorizing it. Originally, if it was an ordinary person, they wouldn't be able to memorize this densely packed wall of tadpole characters even if they wanted to. However, because of Song Qingshu's twin souls and his profound cultivation, his brain's reaction speed and memory far surpassed that of an ordinary person. Moreover, his life was hanging by a thread now, and his universe had exploded. He felt that his mind was unprecedentedly clear. After reading the last word, Song Qingshu suddenly closed his eyes and memorized the entire text from beginning to end. When he finished memorizing, the tadpole characters in his mind suddenly turned into a golden figure, displaying it in front of him at varying speeds. Why does it feel like a holographic projection in a sci-fi movie? Song Qingshu was momentarily absent-minded, but he immediately continued reading without blinking. When he saw the person demonstrating it personally, Song Qingshu felt as if he was suddenly enlightened. So, it's like this. In the previous 23 stone rooms, although he felt that he had more or less comprehended it, there were some key points that he couldn't figure out. Therefore, the actual power that he had learned was far from the power that he had deduced according to the records in the stone rooms. Therefore, he always knew that there must be something that he had not comprehended. Only now did he understand that the palm technique 5 mountains or light was used in this way, and the key to the sword technique 10 steps to kill a man was also here. The lightness skill silver saddle illuminates the white horse, needed to meet those conditions in order to display its greatest power. In his mind, the golden person performed the martial arts recorded in the 23 stone rooms one by one. In the end, the sword technique, palm technique, inner force, and lightness skill were all combined into one, and it was no longer possible to distinguish between palm and sword. After the golden person performed all the martial arts, it suddenly sat down cross-legged. Then, all the acupoints on its body began to shine, indicating the path of the vital energy in its body at this moment. The more Song Qingshu watched, the more surprised he became. This is really incredible. The last path of the vital energy is clearly the opposite of the martial arts that were performed before. It can be said that the vital energy has been reversed. So this is the way to achieve great success. After an unknown amount of time, Song Qingshu suddenly opened his eyes and pointed at the stone wall beside him. A stream of pure golden blood was sucked into the wall like a sharp sword, leaving only a small round hole in the wall. Unless one dug deep into the hole, they would not be able to find that there was an extremely rich poisonous blood hidden inside. This Taishan scripture is really amazing. Song Qingshu was surprised and happy. It should be known that for thousands of years, through the research of countless talented people in Jianghu, the 8 extraordinary meridians and acupoints in the body of a martial artist had become common knowledge. However, the supreme mystery scripture had taken a different path. Most of the acupoints had never been discovered before. Even though there were many acupoints that overlapped with common knowledge, the effects of these acupoints were vastly different from what was commonly known. In other words, the Taishan scripture was like a new body of meridians in the human body. It was hard to say that it was meridians. After all, with Song Qingshu's level of cultivation, when he had examined those parts before, he had not found anything special. However, with the Taishan scripture's method of qi circulation, it had been able to form an energy whirlpool like an acupoint. Did the acupoints of the Taishan scripture exist or not? Song Qingshu was a bit confused. If he said that they existed, then it meant that the people of Jianghu, for thousands of years, including Song Qingshu, who had reached such a high level of cultivation, were all fools. If he said that they did not exist, then he could clearly feel them using the unique method of Taishan Sutra. Who cares, as long as I can use it? Song Qingshu had always been an optimist. If he could not figure out the answer, then he would not dwell on it. Plus, he had just used the Taishan scripture to create new meridians. He had used the new meridians to force the poison of the golden ripple flower out of his body. Now, he had not only recovered to the peak of his power, but he had also learned the real Taishan scripture. Only now did Song Qingshu understand that in the original work, because Shirpatian was illiterate, he learned the Supreme Mystery Sutra by chance by looking at the pictures. It could only be counted as a trick, and he only learned a little bit of it. The real Supreme Mystery Sutra was far more magical than what Shirpatian had learned. Chapter 11:59. However, Song Qingshu soon smiled in relief and dispelled this thought. His mentality was very different from before. Although he could be considered open-minded in the past, the current him could be said to be detached from the secular world to a certain extent. Jiruo and the others must be worried. I should go back first. Realizing that he had been out for a long time, Song Qingshu stood up and walked out. When he was about to reach the door, he suddenly stopped and looked at the tadpole characters on the stone wall. I'm not a pedantic person like Zhang Wuji, who cultivated the 9 Yang divine skill and buried the secret manual in the Kunlun Mountains, waiting for the fated person. He raised his hand to destroy the tadpole characters on the stone wall. However, he suddenly hesitated. If I destroy these tadpole characters, the people on the Island of Heroes will definitely find out that something is wrong, and they will quickly find out that I am the culprit. However, if he did not destroy them, Song Qingshu did not want the magical martial arts on the wall to be learned by others. The people on the Island of Heroes were enemies, not friends. If someone learned it in the future, wouldn't they become a great enemy? While he was in a dilemma, his eyes swept across the stone wall. Suddenly, his heart skipped a beat, and he hurriedly walked over to check. After confirming again and again, he finally found that although the characters on the stone wall had not changed, the tadpole characters no longer had the feeling of leaping out. It was as if they had lost their souls, leaving only a withered shell. Could it be that the characters on the stone wall contained some mysterious power, and after I accepted its inheritance, they became ordinary tadpole characters? Song Qing-shu checked again and finally confirmed his judgment. He could not help but be overjoyed. This way, I could destroy the stone wall and no one will find out. It really saves a lot of effort. If it was the Song Qing-shu of the past, he might have felt ashamed of his behavior. However, the current him had a different mentality. When Song Qing-shu first came to this world, perhaps it was due to the influence of the host's remnant personality, or perhaps it was because all the meridians in his body were broken, that led to him being narrow-minded at first. Later, as he became more capable, his horizons and tolerance also increased, and he gradually became more open-minded. However, at that time, it was inevitable that he would have some hypocritical behavior. Even though he clearly felt that way in his heart, he would always come up with some high-sounding reasons to pretend to be calm in his heart. Sometimes in the dead of the night, Song Qing-shu would ask himself, what's the difference between this behavior and being a whore and having a chastity? Some time ago, he had experienced life and death, but just now he had comprehended the Taishan scripture. His mind was suddenly enlightened, and his realm had been raised to another level. As the saying goes, heaven and earth are not benevolent, and all living things are like straw dogs. From now on, Song Qing-shu would no longer rigidly adhere to the moral standards of the secular world, but would act according to the way of heaven and earth. Destroying the stone wall of the Supreme Mystery Sutra would bring him the most benefits, and at the same time, he would not be discovered. He did not feel guilty at all. Gongzi is out. We have been seeing each other for so long, but there's been no movement inside. I was hesitating whether I should call you or not, Zhang San said with a smile. However, he was thinking, normally, you wouldn't stay long, and you would clamor to come out. But this time, you have been quiet inside for so long that I thought you had fallen asleep. Li Si, who was next to him, suddenly said, Strange, strange. Hearing his words, Zhang San also noticed a trace of abnormality. Hey, why do I suddenly feel that Gongzi has a trace of otherworldly and immortal aura? Song Qing-shu was startled. He did not expect that after practicing the Supreme Mystery Sutra, the change would be so obvious. However, his mouth did not change, and he said, Your flattery is not very good. Zhang San rubbed his eyes and could not help but smile, thinking that he was thinking too much. How could a playboy have any immortal aura? Gongzi, it is almost time to stay on the island. Please make some preparations. We will be returning to the Central Plains soon. Zhang San put aside his previous thoughts and said with a smile, Returning to the Central Plains? Song Qing-shu was secretly happy. Suddenly, he thought that a playboy like the young master in embroidered clothing would definitely not like this desolate Isle of Heroes. He immediately showed his happiness on his face. Finally, we are going back. Zhang San nodded inwardly. Sure enough, he was still a playboy. Song Qing-shu suddenly thought of something and said, The two women in my room should also be brought along. Zhang San said with a smile, Gongzi, I am afraid that is not possible. If the island master finds out, not only will we not be able to escape responsibility, but even Gongzi will be punished. I will talk to the island master. Song Qing-shu stared at him without blinking. But Zhang San was about to say something, but he suddenly saw a strange expression flash through Yang Kai's eyes. He immediately nodded, then okay. Hearing him agree, Li Si, who was at the side, immediately raised his eyebrows. After Song Qing-shu had left, Li Si pulled Zhang San and quietly asked, You why? Zhang San was also startled. He smiled bitterly and said, What the hell, I don't know why I agreed to him. Forget it, just let him be. When the time comes, the one who will be punished will be him. The Supreme Mystery Scripture is really miraculous. Even an expert of Zhang San's level would be caught off guard if he used it to activate the soul transfer technique. Song Qing-shu was still secretly amazed even after he had returned to his room. You're back. Seeing Song Qing-shu open the door, Zhou Jiruo and Qi Feng's faces lit up. The two of them simultaneously stood up, wanting to go and greet him. However, they immediately noticed each other's movements, and the two women couldn't help but look at each other. Chi Fong quickly realized that the other person was his real wife. Her eyes inadvertently revealed a trace of sadness, and she awkwardly sat back down. Zhou Zhuo hesitated for a moment, but she was worried about her husband's emotions, so she hurriedly went to greet him and said, "Qing Shu, you didn't encounter any danger, did you?" "No," and Song Qing Shu was about to tell her that the poison in his body had been cured, but he suddenly thought of something. He subconsciously glanced at Chi Fong, who was not far away, and immediately swallowed the words he was about to say. A trace of a playful smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. "And what?" Zhou Zhiruo gave him a strange look. "Nothing." Song Qing Shu discreetly changed the topic. "You should get ready. In 2 hours, we will leave the Island of Heroes and return to the Central Plains." Zhou Zhuo nodded slightly and said, "Okay, but we must finish this quickly. Otherwise, if we alarm the experts of the Island of Heroes, I'm afraid we will be in danger." Song Qing Shu smiled slightly and said, "Don't worry about those experts, because this time the people of the Island of Heroes will send us back." Then he repeated what Zhang San had just said. "It's not impossible to continue pretending to be this young master, but we are surrounded by a pack of wolves. If we make the slightest mistake, I'm afraid," Zhou Zhiruo said with a frown. Seeing her inadvertently revealing a weak posture, Song Qing Shu's heart was moved. He reached out and hugged her. "Believe me, there will be no problem. Since you're so sure, then." "Hey!" Zhou Zhuo suddenly exclaimed, pushing him away. "You, don't hug me like this, it feels strange." In the past month, the monk has been changing jobs, running back and forth between 2 cities, and settling down in another city, so the updates are not stable. I apologize to my loyal readers. Chapter 1160. A few hours later, Song Qing Shu and the other 2 arrived at the Boundless Sea. The Island of Heroes had sent a large ship to escort their young master in luxurious gown back to the Central Plains. Because of the assassination attempt last time, the people of the Island of Heroes did not dare to be negligent this time. They had sent a large number of experts to ensure that the young master in luxurious gown would not meet with any accidents again. The people of the Island of Heroes are everywhere outside the room. "How are we going to leave?" Zhou Zhuo asked worriedly as she opened the window slightly. Song Qing Shu was regarded as a young master in luxurious gown by those people, so he was arranged to stay in the most comfortable room on the ship. She and Chi Fong, the 2 concubines of the young master in luxurious gown, were naturally also arranged to stay in the same room. Ever since they boarded the ship, Zhou Zhiruo had been observing the guards of the Island of Heroes. In the end, she was disappointed to find that not even a fly could fly out. "Zhiruo, come back and sit down. Stop looking." Song Qing Shu leaned on the chair with his hands behind his neck and said nonchalantly, "I really don't know how you can be so relaxed." Zhou Zhiruo also knew that she could not think of a solution even if she continued to look. She could only close the window and roll her eyes at him when she returned to his side. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. "I'm really curious about who is behind the Island of Heroes." In his previous life, when Song Qing Shu watched Journey of the Gallant, he only thought of the people of the Island of Heroes as a group of experts who were obsessed with martial arts. However, after coming to this world and coming into contact with the people of the Island of Heroes a few times, he realized that they were not as simple as he thought they were. Instead, they were like giant beasts hiding in the shadows. Once they came out, they would definitely be earth-shattering. This time, they had a chance to enter the Island of Heroes. If they did not take this opportunity to investigate the mysterious person, it would be a waste. But you are now poisoned and do not even have the ability to protect yourself. Can't we investigate after you recover? Zhou Zhiruo could not help but stomp her feet. Song Qing Shu raised his eyebrows and said with a smile, "Don't I still have you?" Zhou Zhiruo pursed her lips, and a worried expression appeared on her face. "But I'm only one person, after all. I'm afraid it'll be difficult for me to ensure your safety when there are so many Island of Heroes experts around." "Isn't Sister Qi here?" Song Qing Shu pointed at Chi Fong. Chi Fong was originally a little restless. After all, they were the real husband and wife, and she was like an extra person here. When she heard Song Qingshu's words, she hurriedly waved her hand and said, I'm weak in martial arts, so I can only be a burden to you. Zhou Zhuo frowned slightly. She knew that he was not lying. Although Qi Fong knew some martial arts, she was only slightly stronger than ordinary people. In the martial arts world, she was not eye-catching at all. She was even weaker than some of the more experienced disciples of the Amaze sect. However, Song Qingshu said in a timely manner, Madam, you actually have a good foundation in martial arts. It's just that you haven't had the chance to learn some advanced martial arts. The martial arts of the Amaze sect are profound and very suitable for women to cultivate. Why don't you let the leader of the Amaze sect teach you some martial arts? Qi Fong was even more flustered. She said subconsciously, I'm not talented. How can I trouble Leader Zhou? Zhou also frowned slightly and looked at Song Qingshu angrily. It's not like you don't know the rules of the orthodox sections. Martial arts are never taught to outsiders. Song Qingshu shrugged nonchalantly. Why don't you just let her join the Amaze sect? Zhou Zhuo looked hesitant. It's not a problem for Sister Qi to join the Amaze sect, but I can't take her as a disciple. Of course not. You two are sisters. Song Qingshu hurriedly added. Qi Fong blushed. Zhou Zhuo also heard the hidden meaning in his words. She secretly glared at him and said, Then I'll have to take her as a disciple. But Sister Qi is older than me, so she's naturally my senior sister. There's no reason for a junior sister to teach her senior sister martial arts. You're such a cute little girl. I didn't expect you to be poisoned by the sect's rules so deeply. Song Qingshu couldn't help but touch his forehead. Don't go through so much trouble. You can teach her martial arts in private. No one else will know anyway. But Zhou Zhuo still wanted to say something, but Song Qingshu interrupted her. This is a special situation. Don't you want one more person to protect your husband? All right then. Zhou Zhuo gritted her teeth. In the end, her worry for her husband's safety prevailed. She turned to Qi Fong and said, Sister Qi, I didn't mean to refuse just now. It's really the sect's rules. I hope you don't blame me. She was about to bow and apologize. Qi Fong quickly held her. Sister Zhou, why do you have to do this? Why would I blame you? I'm worried that she's not talented enough to learn the divine skills of your sect. I also know that with your kind character, you won't think too much. Zhou Zhuo smiled. Sister, don't worry. The martial arts of the Amaze sect are orthodox. It's easy to learn. There was one more thing she didn't say. The martial arts of the orthodox sects were usually moderate and peaceful. It was easy to learn, but difficult to master. Therefore, in the Jianghu, the progress of the orthodox sect's disciples in the early stages was far less than that of the evil sect's disciples. However, after 20 years, the orthodox sect's disciples could gradually catch up with the evil sect's disciples. After 30 years, the evil sect's disciples were not as good as the orthodox sect's disciples. Zhou Zhuo pulled Qi Fong to sit on the bed. The foundation of all the martial arts of the Amaze sect is on the internal force. I'll first teach you the Amaze Zhuyang skill. Sister, please understand carefully. Then, she whispered the internal force incantation to her. Song Qingshu looked at the two figures on the bed who were intimate with each other. A proud smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Only when the harem is happy and harmonious can I enjoy the happiness of having two wives. Unfortunately, it seems that there is still a long way to go. Sister Qi, without a few years of dedicated practice, I'm afraid that it will be difficult to see results. Now that time is pressing. I'll first use my internal force to open up your meridians and help you reach the initial realm. After saying that, Zhou Zhuo didn't wait for Qi Fong's response. She stretched out her slender fingers and pointed at various meridians on Qi Fong's body. Qi Fong was about to open her mouth to say something, but Zhou Zhuo immediately said, Don't speak. Pay attention to the path of the genuine Qi in your body. Qi Fong had a nod. Although she was not a master, she was still a martial arts practitioner. She knew that Zhou Zhuo would consume a lot of internal force by doing this. It was a typical case of benefiting others at the expense of oneself. After a long time, Jojo gently breathed a sigh of relief and withdrew her hands tiredly. Circulate the genuine chi a few more times according to the path just now and consolidate it. I'll rest for a while first. Just as she was about to fall asleep on the bed, she suddenly felt that her clothes had been soaked with sweat. It was slippery and extremely uncomfortable. Jojo frowned slightly and had to shout, "Ching Shu, ask someone outside to prepare a bucket of hot water. I want to take a bath first before I sleep." "Oh no, prepare 2 buckets. Sister Chi should also need it later." "Okay." Hearing her weak voice and haggard face, Song Qingshu couldn't help but feel pity for her. After going out to give the order, he immediately returned to her side. He held her hand and asked with concern, "Zhiruo, how are you?" "It's okay. With my current cultivation, I can make up for the lost power after a few days of rest. Anyway, I'm afraid that this ship can't dock for a few days, so I don't need to do anything for the time being." Zhou Zhiruo's whole body was delicate as she nestled in his arms. Chapter 1161. Song Qingshu said seriously, "The most precious thing on the sea is fresh water. It's a luxury to prepare a bucket of water for bathing." "Is that true?" Zhou Zhiruo looked at him suspiciously. Song Qingshu said hurriedly, "I guarantee it with my integrity." However, his eyes fell on her body involuntarily. Because she had consumed a lot of true qi just now, Zhou Zhiruo was already soaked in sweat from head to toe. Her clothes clung tightly to her skin, and her graceful body was faintly discernible. In particular, the fine sweat on her forehead made her hair a little messy and stuck to her face, which made her look even more strangely charming. "Your integrity." Zhou Zhiruo pursed her lips and chuckled. Suddenly, she frowned and said, "What about Sister Qi later? My Zhiruo is as pure as ice and as clean as jade. How could there be any dirt on her body? She definitely won't mind." Seeing that she was still a little hesitant, Song Qingshu said with a smile, "You don't know, there's one of the top basketball superstars in our hometown. He even publicly stated that he was willing to drink the bathwater of a female star." "Lecture." Zhou Zhiruo blushed and spat. Although she didn't quite understand what a basketball superstar was and what a female star was, she could roughly guess what kind of scene it was. "Do a laborer. His temperament is a little wretched." Song Qingshu said in his heart, "Do, I'm sorry for dragging you into this. But these are your own words, so it's not slandering you." Zhou didn't want to continue arguing with him. Okay, go hide yourself." "Why?" Song Qingshu suddenly became anxious and leaned over to hug her. "We're an old couple. Why are you still so shy?" Zhou Zhiruo dodged with the tip of her toes. Her skirt fluttered in the wind, and her whole body was as light as a butterfly. She stole a glance at Qi Feng's direction and said in a low voice, "She's still watching." Song Qingshu smiled and said, "She's currently meditating and doesn't know what's going on here." "Go away. Don't mess around." Zhou bit her lip and pushed him away with a red face. Seeing that she was really a little angry, Song Qingshu had no choice but to walk to the door and stand with his back facing her. He thought that women in this world were too reserved. They couldn't even bring themselves to try some of the fun things in the boudoir. But on second thought, this reserve and shyness was also the charm of the women in this world. Seeing that Song Qingshu really didn't peek at her, Zhou Zhuo pursed her lips and quietly began to unbuckle her belt, as if she was afraid that the slightest sound would cause her husband to have some evil thoughts. Her clothes were loosened, and a perfect body was exposed to the air. Zhou Zhuo's cheeks were slightly red, and she hurriedly immersed her whole body in the bathtub. Only then did she let out a long sigh of relief. She had used a lot of energy to help Qi Feng open up her meridians, and she was already exhausted. Originally, she wanted to lie down and sleep, but because she was sweating, she needed to wash her body, so she forced herself to stay up until now. Now that her whole body was immersed in the warm water, it didn't take long for her whole body to lean on the edge of the bathtub and unknowingly fall asleep. Hearing the faint sound of water coming from behind, Song Qingshu's voice also began to ripple, but he was worried that his wife would be embarrassed into anger, so he didn't turn around. Who knew that after a while, there was no movement behind him? He couldn't help but look back, only to see that Zhou Zhuo had fallen asleep with her head leaning on the edge of the bathtub. Her delicate snow-white shoulders were exposed to the water. Under the reflection of the two, it was hard to tell whether the water was clearer or her body was more crystalline. Song Qingshu's heart connected, and he came to her back and gently rubbed her fragrant shoulders, secretly transferring a wisp of true qi into her. Even in her sleep, Zhou unconsciously let out a comfortable moan. It's all my fault, causing Sister Zhou to be so tired. Qi Fang's apologetic voice came from beside him. It turned out that she had already finished her cultivation and found the situation here, so she came to check. It's okay. I am now helping her consolidate her foundation. Next, she will be as good as before after resting for 2 days. Song Qingshu turned around and smiled at her, but when he saw her current appearance, he couldn't help but stare. Just now, when Zhou Zhuo helped her open up her meridians, her whole body was soaked with sweat, and now Qi Fang was even worse. Later, when she ran her true qi a few times, her whole body seemed to have been soaked in water. The cloth of her dress was tightly attached to her body, showing off the young woman's well-proportioned body without reservation, especially the swollen chest of her breastfeeding period, which was even more eye-catching. "Madam, come and take a bath. It's only a bucket of water, don't mind." Song Qingshu tried to make his tone sound normal. Qi Fang's face turned red, and she said in a low voice, I will take a bath later." Perhaps it was because she was too wet. As soon as she finished speaking, she was blown by the wind, and her whole body involuntarily shivered. Song Qingshu's voice sank. "Today is different from the past. If Madam catches a cold at this critical moment and causes the qi that you have painstakingly formed to dissipate, won't it make Zhuo's efforts go down the drain? Is it really that serious?" Qi Fang was also frightened. It didn't matter if she caught a cold, but if it really caused Zhuo's hard work to go down the drain, she would blame herself to death. In any case, I'm also one of the top masters in Jianghu, and I have a lot of say in this aspect. Originally, if you practiced the Mei Nine Yang skill normally, I am afraid it would take at least 3 to 5 years for you to reach this level. But you're, after all, with external help, if you can't completely consolidate in the next few days, I am afraid. Song Qingshu paused, and then continued. If you catch a cold at this juncture, your entire body's essence, qi, and spirit will be greatly consumed, and the newly opened meridians will quickly shrink and return to normal. I will take a bath. Although Qi Fang felt that it was a little inappropriate, she did not dare to take the risk when she heard him say it methodically. Can you turn around first? Right now, I am helping Zhuo to consolidate her foundation, and I can't let go. Song Qingshu hinted at Zhuo with his eyes. Moreover, madam, why are you so shy? Which part of your body have I not seen? Then okay. Qi Fang lowered her head, had no choice but to suppress her shyness, and began to take off her clothes. Throughout the process, she did not dare to look at Song Qingshu. Even though the two of them were already skin to skin, she did not dare to take off all her clothes. In the end, she still kept her underwear, directly covered her chest, and dipped into the bathtub in panic with a red face. Is the custom in Madam's hometown to wear clothes to bathe? Soon, she heard Song Qingshu's teasing voice. Qi Fang was shocked and looked at the man next to her in surprise. Why are you in too? It turned out that Song Qingshu had taken off his clothes and ran into the bathtub. So that Madam will not be shy. Now that I am naked, we are even, Song Qingshu said with a smile. This can also be called even? Qi Fang secretly spat, but there was nothing she could do now. She could only quietly try to wash up as soon as possible and get out. Song Qingshu smiled at her, ignored her, and directly swam to Zhou Zhuo's side, his strong body gently leaning against her. Chapter 1162. Qi Fang, who was on the other side of the tub, had a wonderful expression on her face. Can't you see that I'm here? Song Qingshu smiled wickedly and used his body to block Zhou Zhuo's line of sight. He said in a low voice, she can't see. Zhou Zhuo's eyes were drowsy, and her whole body was limp. She couldn't move the man on top of her no matter how hard she tried. She could only bite her lips and moan sweetly. Hurry up! After getting the approval of the beauty, Song Qing-shu was no longer polite and slammed into her. Chi Fong looked at everything in front of her with her mouth agape. How could he be like this? Did he forget that there was someone here? Noticing that Zhou Zhuo was deliberately suppressing her voice, Chi Fong's face became redder and redder. She hurriedly wiped her body and wanted to get out of the tub. Who knew that Song Qing-shu seemed to have eyes in the back of his head and grabbed her wrist. Chi Fong suddenly felt that she couldn't lift her body and couldn't leave even if she wanted to. After listening for a long time, Zhou Zhuo finally begged in a low voice, Qing-shu, I'm really tired. If you still want it, go find Sister Chi. Chi Fong secretly spat when she heard this. She thought that as someone's legal wife, she was encouraging her husband to find another woman, and that woman was another man's wife. This was improper. Feeling Zhou Zhuo's haggard expression, Song Qing-shu gently kissed her forehead and said with pity, I won't torture you anymore. You can rest by yourself. And remember to carry me back later. Her face was still flushed from the excitement. Zhou Zhuo's lips couldn't help but form a sweet and lazy smile. However, her eyelids were getting heavier and heavier. She couldn't hold on any longer and soon closed her eyes. When Chi Fong saw Song Qing-shu turn around, her heart trembled. What do you want to do? What do you think? Song Qing-shu didn't wait for her to react and kissed her directly. Sob, sob, Chi Fong struggled to break free and had a chance to breathe. She said in a trembling voice, No, this is ridiculous. She had always been a woman who scrupulously abided by the virtues of a woman. Even after Song Qing-shu lost consciousness and took over her body, she did not change her mind. It was only when she heard that her husband wanted to kill her and marry the daughter of a wealthy family for the sake of fame and fortune that she finally became disheartened. Later on, she followed Song Qing-shu. Apart from his charisma, she was bitterly disappointed and gave up on herself. However, deep down, she was still a virtuous and traditional woman. Previously, when she was intimate with Song Qing-shu in private, she could still find a reason to convince herself. But now, in front of his wife, how could she put down her pride? If Zhuo wakes up, you will be even more embarrassed. Song Qing-shu kissed her earlobe and whispered. Chi Fong subconsciously glanced at Zhou Zhuo. Seeing that her eyes were closed and she was sleeping soundly, she didn't know what to do for a moment. While she was hesitating, her whole body suddenly trembled, and she said in a trembling voice, Why did you come in? If you really don't want to, I won't go in so easily. Seeing that Chi Fong's face was red as if she was angry, Song Qing-shu quickly said, Don't misunderstand, madam. I am forcing the poison out. Chi Fong bit her lips and endured it bitterly. She snorted in annoyance. What kind of poison is this? Isn't that it? Song Qing-shu smiled and buried his head back down. What an enemy. Chi Fong sighed. She had to endure the strange feeling in her body while paying attention to Zhou Zhuo's movements. She planned to push the man away if anything went wrong. Just like that, after more than 10 days of indulgence, the boat finally reached the shore. There was an exquisite carriage waiting for them. Young master, please. Zhang San smiled and gestured to the carriage. Song Qing-shu nodded. Just as he was about to bring the two women into the carriage, he was stopped by Li Si. What? Song Qing-shu pretended to be dissatisfied and snorted. Zhang San hurriedly smiled and tried to smooth things over. Young master, you also know that master is very strict with you. This time, we have already taken a great risk by letting young master bring them back. If you bring two women from outside back to the residence, I'm afraid your residence will be turned upside down. Us brothers won't be able to bear the consequences. We've already brought them here. Don't tell me you want to send them back now. Song Qing-shu said angrily. Young master, please don't misunderstand. The two of them definitely won't be able to follow young master back to the mansion. How about this? I'll find a house for them to stay in. If young master misses them in the future, you can sneak out to meet them. Zhang San wiped the sweat off his face. He felt it was strange. How could a hedonistic son of a rich family suddenly be so powerful? Song Qingshu frowned. However, he knew that it was unrealistic to bring the two of them with him in the current situation. All right, I'll talk to them first. Zhang San, Li Si, and the others tactfully ran to the other side. Only then did Song Qingshu tell Zhou, Zhiruo, and Qi Fong about their current situation. He then whispered, "Listen to their arrangements and settle down in that residence. When it's late at night, you two will quietly escape. The experts of the Isle of Heroes will definitely be paying attention to me. When the time comes, with your martial arts skills, it won't be difficult for you to escape. But you're going to enter the tiger's den alone," Zhou Zhuo said worriedly. Song Qingshu smiled. "Don't worry, I've already recovered." "When did you recover?" Zhou Zhuo was both surprised and happy. Song Qingshu smiled embarrassedly. It was not appropriate for him to tell her the truth. He could only say, "Thanks to elder sister Qi's help during this time." Qi Fong's little face suddenly turned red. What does it have to do with me?" Zhou Zhuo and Song Qingshu glanced at her chest at the same time, which made her even more embarrassed. Zhou Zhiruo snorted. "All right, we'll wait for you at the House of Red Sleeves in the city. At that time, you can explain how you recovered." "House of Red Sleeves?" Song Qingshu was startled. Zhou Zhiruo was also a little embarrassed. She whispered, "It's the most famous brothel in Lin and—" Not only did Song Qingshu have a strange look in his eyes, even Qi Fong exclaimed. Although she lived in Lin, she had always been a good wife and a loving mother. How would she know such a place? That place is full of crooks and honest people. It's the best place to hide, Zhou Zhiruo hurriedly explained. "All right, I'll come out and meet you as soon as possible. Be careful." Song Qingshu reluctantly said goodbye to the two girls. The carriage also slowly moved. Chapter 1163. Song Qingshu couldn't help but feel strange. According to his conjecture, this young master in embroidered gown was born in a well-off family. But this time, although he had a decent carriage, he didn't have any servants to greet him. It should be known that in this world, the rich and powerful families were very particular about these etiquettes. Could it be that I guessed wrong? Song Qingshu looked outside through the screen window. The bustling streets and the abundance of people were different from other places. But since he had traveled through time, what big cities hadn't he seen? Although Linen was bustling, he didn't put it in his eyes. His mind was completely focused on guessing who this young master in embroidered gown was. After traveling for half a day, the carriage finally drove into a remote courtyard in the city. Even though this courtyard could be considered elegant, it inevitably gave off a feeling of decay and old age. Song Qingshu became even more puzzled. This residence doesn't look like much. Soon the carriage stopped, and Zhang San's voice came from outside. "Young master, please get off." After getting off, Zhang San and the others didn't say anything. They silently led him around the courtyard. Song Qingshu was full of doubts, but he was afraid of exposing himself, so he didn't dare to ask. After walking for a while, the group of people unknowingly came to a remote small door. There was a plain carriage waiting there. Zhang San cupped his fists and said, "Young master, we are too big a target. It's not convenient to travel with you. Please get on the carriage. We will protect you in secret." Song Qingshu nodded and suddenly understood. So it's a plan to repair the plank road in the open and move in the dark. Thanks to the visual bombardment from the various spy movies in his previous life, he was already familiar with these connections and how to shake off his pursuers. Now that he knew the secret behind it, Song Qingshu immediately calmed down and began to meditate in the carriage. Along the way, they passed through about 3 or 5 residences. Finally, the carriage was replaced by a sedan chair. After traveling for another half a day, they suddenly saw 2 large stone lions squatting on the north side of the street. There were 3 large doors with the heads of beasts, and in front of the doors sat a dozen or so people in luxurious clothing. The main door was not open. Only the east and west doors were used. There was a plaque above the main door. On the plaque were 5 big words, "Build the Weigua Mansion." Song Qingshu was secretly shocked. Weiguafu? Isn't this the house of Jia Sherdao, the privy commissioner of the Southern Song dynasty. He had been the emperor of the Qing dynasty and the Jin dynasty, so he knew a thing or two about the structure of the power centers in the world. Duke Wei of the Southern Song dynasty was the famous powerful minister Jia Sherdao. Now that he was the privy envoy, he was one of the most powerful ministers in the court. However, this chaotic world was, after all, different from the history of his previous life. In the history, Jia Dao was so powerful that even the emperor had to respectfully address him as Shurchen, and all the officials called him Duke of Zhou. In this chaotic world, the Southern Song dynasty still had Ma Chi-chun, Han Xianzhou, and Shi Miyuan, who were famous treacherous and powerful officials in history. Naturally, his power was not as exaggerated as in the history. Even so, Jia Sherdao was still a powerful figure in the court of the Southern Song dynasty. He was not someone to be underestimated. While Song Qingshu was bewildered, the sedan chair was being carried directly in the direction of the Wei Guofu. It did not enter through the main gate, but through the western side gate. They are from a Jia family. Song Qingshu was secretly shocked. Jia Sherdao was so powerful and had a close relationship with the Isle of Heroes. What did he want? The sedan chair bearers carried the sedan chair in. When they were about to turn, they rested and left. While Song Qingshu was confused, a girl dressed like a maid came to greet him with a group of old women. She smiled and said, "Master Bao, you are finally back. Our ancestor has been talking about you all day." As she spoke, she called over 3 or 4 well-dressed servants who were about 17 or 18 years old. They lifted the sedan chair and continued to walk into the garden. Song Qingshu secretly observed the girl through the gap of the curtain. She had a slender body and a long face. Although she was not stunning, she looked gentle and lovely, which made people subconsciously feel close to her. "Master Bao." Song Qingshu murmured the name of the maid. He had a strange expression on his face. Why did it sound so familiar? What happened to you today? Why are you so quiet? The maid walked beside the sedan chair and secretly laughed through the curtain when no one was paying attention. Song Qingshu felt bad. This girl seemed to be the personal maid of the man in the brocade gown. From her tone, she seemed to have a good relationship with the man in the brocade gown. Otherwise, she would not have addressed him so casually. Considering how familiar she was with her master, it would be difficult for him to hide it from her. "I just took a few carriages and sat in the sedan chair for a while. I feel a little dizzy and don't want to talk." Song Qingshu quickly found a reasonable excuse. "Then hurry up and take a nap. Right now, the great ancestor is waiting for you in the room. When the time comes, don't look like you're sick. Otherwise, the entire Wei Guo manor will not be at peace." The girl couldn't help but cover her mouth and laugh. Song Qingshu immediately had a headache. He knew nothing about the situation in the mansion, and he was about to meet the old ancestor. At that time, if there were any relatives there and he couldn't recognize them, it would be troublesome. He wanted to inquire about some information from this girl, but seeing her bright eyes, it was obvious that she was a smart girl. Moreover, she was the servant of that young master in luxurious clothes. If he was not careful, it would be easy for her to see through him. Although Song Qingshu was a little nervous, he had experienced the great waves of the Qing dynasty and the Jin dynasty. He was not that worried about a mere house of high dukes. After all, his martial arts had been restored. If worst comes to worst, he could just use his light body technique and escape. With this thought, he gradually calmed down. He was ready to deal with whatever came his way and act according to the situation. The sedan chair stopped in front of a flower door. The servants retreated, and the girl came forward to open the curtain. She helped Song Qingshu down the sedan chair. "Be careful." Song Qingshu couldn't help but laugh. This rich family was very particular. Not only did she not know how to eat, but a man like him needed the help of a servant to get off the sedan chair. However, he was pretending to be the man in the brocade gown, so he didn't dare to do anything strange. He held the servant's hand and got off the sedan chair. It was soft and warm. Song Qingshu couldn't help but think that the girl's little hand was really beautiful. However, he was in a tiger's den, So he quickly calmed down and let the servant lead him inside. After entering the flower door, there was a corridor on both sides. In the middle was a hall, where there was a rosewood shelf and a large marble screen. After turning the screen, there were 3 small halls. Behind the hall was the main courtyard. There were 5 rooms in the front, all of which were richly ornamented. On both sides of the hall, there were all kinds of parrots, thrushes, and other birds hanging on the walls. Song Qingshu secretly clicked his tongue when he saw that it was as beautiful as the palaces of the Jin Kingdom and the Qin Kingdom. It seemed that Jia Sherdao had been corrupted a lot. On the platform, there were a few girls in red and green sitting. As soon as they saw them, they smiled and greeted them. They said, "The old lady was reading just now. What a coincidence." Chapter 1164. When Song Qingshu entered the room, he saw 2 people supporting an old mother with silvery hair on her temples. Song Qingshu thought that this must be the ancestor that the servant girl was talking about. When he was about to pay his respects, the other party had already pulled him into her arms. Song Qingshu's heart was crying out loud. Song Qingshu's expression was very interesting at this moment. He was already in his 20s or 30s, but he was actually being embraced like a child. Although it was awkward, he also secretly breathed a sigh of relief. After all, he was worried about how to address the other party. This saved him a lot of trouble. "I really missed you so much." The silver-haired old lady held his hand and felt that the more she looked at him, the happier she was. After a long time, she remembered something and pointed to the people next to her and said, "Quickly go and greet your aunt and mother. Don't forget your sister-in-law." Song Qingshu observed her expression. From her line of sight, he could see the person she was referring to. They were 2 typical middle-aged women. The biggest difference was that the Annie's eyes were wandering. It was obvious that she was a weak person. On the other hand, the mother of the young master in embroidered gown was much more graceful and elegant. Song Qingshu carefully paid his respects to the 2. When it was the old lady's turn to mention his sister-in-law, his eyes immediately lit up. A graceful and quiet young woman sat there, just like that. Her appearance was graceful and elegant, but it was a pity that although it was clearly a woman's best years, her eyes lacked the vitality that they should have, as if she was not interested in anything in the world. "Greetings, sister-in-law." Song Qingshu noticed that everyone else in the room was dressed in red and green. Each of their clothes was extremely gorgeous, but she was wearing plain clothes. He could not help but secretly think, could it be that she is now a widow? The young woman nodded and casually said a few words as a return of the greeting. Her attitude was cold and indifferent. The others in the room seemed to be used to it, and no one showed any strange expressions. The silver-haired old lady said again, "Invite the girls over. Today Brother Bao is back. Everyone should be lively and you don't have to go to school." Everyone agreed, and 2 of them left. When Song Qingshu heard Tao Hong talk about the in-laws of the Jiao residents on the ship, he had some doubts. Now that everyone in the residence called him Brother Bao and Second Master Bao, and they all had the surname Jia, could it be Dream of the Red Chamber? While Song Qingshu was confused, he quickly accepted this reality. After all, this world was really chaotic. It was not a big deal to have another dream of the Red Chamber. Especially when he thought of the plum blossoms, orchids, bamboo, and chrysanthemums in Dream of the Red Chamber. Song Qingshu felt a little happy. I wonder if Lin Daiyu, Shui Baochai, Qin Kaching, and the others are here. Just as he was letting his imagination run wild, he saw 3 wet nurses and 5 or 6 maids escorting 3 sisters over. Song Qingshu couldn't help but sigh. These noble ladies lived like princes, and their mother's generation were all beauties. When it came to their generation, their looks definitely wouldn't be too bad. The first one's skin was slightly plump and fit her figure. Her cheeks were moist, and her nose was smooth like goose fat. She was gentle and quiet and looked very amiable. The second one had thin shoulders and a slim waist. She had a tall and slender figure. She had a duck's face. Her eyes were handsome, and her eyebrows were slender. The third one had a small body and a small face. Hairpins, rings, skirts, and coats. The three of them were dressed in the same way. Song Qing-shu thought that these three girls were probably the three sisters Ingchun, Tanchun, and Shichuan. But in this world, his elder sister was the concubine in the palace. He did not know if there was a Yuan Chun who entered the palace as a concubine and dream of the Red Chamber. The three girls thought that the person in front of them was really their brother. They could not help but show joy on their faces. They pulled him aside and asked him all sorts of questions. Song Qing-shu was smelled by the women's fragrance on the three girls. He felt like his mind was wandering. He could not help but click his tongue. No wonder that man in silk clothes had a hint of makeup on him. Growing up in a country of women, it was impossible not to be affected. Suddenly, he heard laughter from the back courtyard. "I came late. I did not receive the guests from afar." Quote. Song Qing-shu was puzzled. All these people are holding their breath. They are so respectful. Who is this visitor? Why is he so rude? While he was thinking, he saw a group of wives and maids surrounding a person coming in from the back door. This person was dressed differently from the other girls. She was brightly embroidered, like a celestial concubine. She wore a golden silk 8 treasures beaded bun on her head. Her hair was coiled up with a 5 phoenix pearl hairpin. Around her neck was a pure gold necklace. Her skirt was tied with a pea green sash. She wore a narrow red satin jacket with 100 butterflies embroidered on it. On the outside, she wore a 5-colored silk green and silver rat coat. She had a pair of phoenix eyes. Her eyebrows were arched like willow leaves. Her face contained the power of spring. Her red lips had not even lifted when she smiled. Song Qing-shu's heart trembled. One look, and I can tell that this woman is a shrewd and valiant woman. I must be careful when dealing with her, lest she sees through me. However, he could not help but take a few more glances at her. Her slender figure and voluptuous body made it hard for men not to think of her in bed. The old madam laughed. "Phone Lotzi, you're still as noisy as ever. Your uncle is not an outsider. How can he be considered a guest?" Song Qing-shu nodded to himself. His guess was confirmed. This slender and voluptuous woman must be Wang Shifeng. Wang Shifeng laughed. "Didn't Uncle just come back from a faraway trip? Of course he is a guest. I can't win an argument against you." The old madam laughed. She did not seem offended. "It's getting late. Let's prepare dinner." She then turned to Song Qing-shu. "Your father and uncle are busy, so we won't wait for them. We want to have a good meal with them around. By the way, where is Brother Lien?" The last sentence was directed at Wang Shifeng. Wang Shifeng laughed. "Elder madam, he is in charge of the construction of the Grand View Garden. He is running around everywhere. Don't worry about him. It must have been hard on him." The old madam nodded. Wang Shifeng was overjoyed. It's my duty. While they were talking, the maids had already begun to prepare the banquet. The old madam sat there motionlessly. Wang Shifeng cleverly helped with the chopsticks. Madame Wang served the soup. The pretty widow who had caught Song Qing-shu's attention earlier served the rice. Thanks to reading Dream of the Red Chamber in his previous life, Song Qing-shu had gradually figured out everyone's identity. Disregarding the few he had recognized earlier, the man in the brocade gown was naturally Jia Baoyu. The silver-haired old madam was obviously Jia Baoyu's mother. The aunt was probably Madame Xing. As for the pretty widow, she was probably Li Wan, the widow of Jia Baoyu's brother, Jia Zhu. Jia Baoyu's mother sat alone on the couch. Madame Xing and Madame Wang followed suit. Everyone's eyes fell on Song Qing-shu. He couldn't help but be secretly alarmed. It looked like this Jia Baoyu was really favored. Wang Shifeng and Li Wan were both his sisters-in-law, yet they had to give way to him. Song Qing-shu reacted quickly and sat down without a trace. Then Ingchun, Tanchun, and Shichuan sat down one after another. Li Wan and Wang Shifeng were the last to sit down. The maids on the side carried a horsetail whisk, a mouthwash, and a handkerchief. Fortunately, Song Qing-shu had experienced the imperial palace. He naturally wouldn't expose these aristocratic details. His only worry was that everyone present was very close to Jia Baoyu. If they started chatting at the dinner table, he might not be able to defend himself. But he was quickly overjoyed. The Jia family clearly had a rule. No one spoke during the meal. Although there were many maids waiting on the outside, not a single cough was heard. After the meal was finished, The maid served tea on small trays. Jia Baoyu's mother waved her hand. "You may go. Let's talk freely." Hearing this, Madame Xing and Madame Wang hurriedly stood up. After chatting for a while, Fang Yinfeng and Li Wan left. After those people left, Jia Baoyu's mother motioned for Song Qingshu to sit next to her. "Quickly tell me what you've been doing these past few days." Song Qingshu groaned inwardly. This kind of small talk was the easiest way to reveal a flaw. Moreover, he was facing Jia Baoyu's mother, who was very fond of him. Chapter 1165. Song Qingshu knew that he would be exposed if he continued to talk, so he hurriedly said, "Ancestor, I've been traveling for the past few days, and I'm very tired now. I can't wait to go to bed and have a good sleep." He deliberately yawned as he spoke. Seeing this, Mrs. Jia became anxious. "My sweetheart, sleep here. I'll ask the maids to make the bed for you." Song Qingshu's scalp went numb. He hurriedly said, "I don't want to disturb you. I better go back to my yard to sleep." Mrs. Jia smiled. "I know you don't like beds. That's right. It's more comfortable to sleep in your own place. Shiren, take your young master back to rest." "Yes, ancestor." The maidservant from before walked in with a smile on her face. Then Song Qingshu said goodbye to Mrs. Jia and followed Shiren back to his residence. Looking at Shiren's graceful figure, Song Qingshu nodded secretly. There were many women in Dream of the Red Chamber, so it was impossible for Song Qingshu to remember all of them. However, he still had some impressions of some special characters. For example, Shiren was the chief maid of Jia Baoyu. Her original surname was Hua, but Jia Baoyu named her Shiren after the illusion of the fragrance of flowers. Shiren not only arranged Jia Baoyu's daily life, but also was his sexual enlightenment tutor. In Dream of the Red Chamber, Shiren knew what her family wanted. In the future, she would become Jia Baoyu's concubine, so she gave in to him. However, no one expected that the Jia family would decline and she would marry another man. Song Qingshu quietly looked at Shiren and saw that her eyebrows were slightly relaxed. She was no longer a young girl. He couldn't help but laugh. Jia Baoyu in Dream of the Red Chamber, who respected women so much, had taken her in. Judging from the signs on the Isle of Heroes, Jia Baoyu in this world was a complete veteran. How could he let go of such a delicious prey? It's a bit tricky now. Song Qingshu secretly frowned. Shiren usually took care of Jia Baoyu's daily life and had intimate relations with him. It was really troublesome to hide it from her. "Why are you worried, young master?" Cece was very sensitive, and Song Qingshu's frown didn't escape her notice. "It's nothing." Song Qingshu laughed and thought to himself, "I can't tell you that I'm worried about you. Even if young master doesn't say it, I can guess it. You must be afraid of being punished by old master." Shiren giggled and said, "Don't worry. Although master is usually serious, he really loves you. He won't really let you suffer." Song Qingshu replied with a smile. At the same time, he thought to himself, it seems that the father and son relationship in this world is similar to the one described in Dream of the Red Chamber. The only difference is that Jia Zheng has become Jia Sherdao. But it's strange. In Dream of the Red Chamber, Jia Zheng's brother is called Jia Shi, and Jia Sherdao's father is called Jia Shi. The pronunciation is the same, and the characters are similar. In addition, the Jia, Shi, Wang, and Shui families also exist. How can there be such a coincidence in this world? Is it possible that Dream of the Red Chamber isn't about the Chao family during the Kong and Qian dynasties of the Qing dynasty, as speculated by the Red scholars in my previous life, but the story of the Jia family in the Southern Song dynasty? Song Qingshu shook his head. Now that the Qing dynasty and the Southern Song dynasty were ruled by the river, there was no need to care about what was going on. Since they were already here, it was better to take things as they came. Halfway through, a servant suddenly caught up with them and said breathlessly, "Young master, old master is back. He wants you to go to him." Shiren covered her mouth and chuckled. "What you're afraid of really happens. Young master, you really know the future." Song Qingshu smiled slightly and didn't explain the misunderstanding. "You can go back first. I'll come back later." He wasn't worried that he wouldn't be able to find his way back. After all, there were maids and servants everywhere in the mansion. He could just ask one of them to lead the way. Along the way, he could also ask about the situation in the mansion. He didn't have to worry that the other party would be as familiar with Jia Baoyu as Shirin was and suspect anything. Well, okay then. Looking at Song Qingshu's departing figure, Shirin was confused. Usually, when young master heard that he was going to see old master, he was like a mouse seeing a cat. Why did he change his temper today? Young master's return this time was a little strange, but she couldn't tell what was strange at the moment. Song Qingshu followed the servant to the front of study. The servant quickly excused himself, and Song Qingshu had no choice but to walk in by himself. He was nervous and excited. He was nervous because he was afraid of being seen through, but excited because he was about to meet one of the most famous treacherous officials in history. Come in if you're here. Don't dawdle outside. A majestic voice suddenly came from inside. Song Qingshu's heart skipped a beat. Although he didn't try to hide himself, ordinary people couldn't see him from so far away. Could this Jia Shidao be a martial arts master? Thinking of this possibility, Song Qingshu didn't dare to be careless anymore. He quickly hid his power and didn't dare to show any sign of genuine qi. He wasn't afraid of Jia Shidao. With Song Qingshu's current kung fu, Jia Shidao wouldn't be able to defeat him no matter how powerful he was. However, Song Qingshu was here to find out the secret behind the Isle of Heroes. If he revealed his identity too early, it would be equivalent to failing the mission. Carefully walking in, Song Qingshu mimicked Jia Baoyu's tone of greeting and took the opportunity to look at the treacherous official in history. He saw that Jia Shidao had a serious face, and the most eye-catching thing about him was the mustache on his mouth. If an ordinary person had a mustache like that, they would definitely look ugly. However, Jia Shidao's mustache looked extraordinary. It seems that being in a high position for a long time and having great kung fu can indeed sublimate a person's temperament. Although Jia Shidao hid himself very well, Song Qingshu was very powerful now. Coupled with his suspicions, Song Qingshu immediately discovered that Jia Shidao had kung fu. Unfortunately, Song Qingshu was also worried that Jia Shidao would see through him, so he didn't dare to investigate further. Therefore, he could only roughly feel that Jia Shidao's kung fu was very powerful, but he didn't know how powerful it was. Jia Shidao casually asked him some trivial things, and Song Qingshu answered him carefully. After a while, Jia Shidao changed the topic. I heard that someone tried to assassinate you on the island. Here it comes. Song Qingshu's face brightened. Yes. Did you see the assassin's face? Jia Shidao asked in a low voice. No, the assassin's face was covered. Song Qingshu was also very surprised. Why would someone try to kill Jia Baoyu, and on the Isle of Heroes no less? From the information he had so far, Jia Shidao had a very close relationship with the Isle of Heroes. Jia Baoyu was like home on the island. That's what I expected. Jia Shidao snorted coldly, and there was a hint of murderous intent in his voice. After a moment of silence, he suddenly asked, How did you survive that assassin's attack? Just as Song Qingshu was about to answer, Jia Shidao coldly said, Don't try to fool Zhang San and the others. If that person dared to try to assassinate you, then he must have been very confident. I don't think you have the ability to do it. As a father, he knew his son best. Jia Baoyu was good at playing with women, but his kung fu wasn't good enough. However, Song Qingshu was prepared for this question, so he answered calmly, It was the woman in the room who saved me. One of the two women you brought back this time? Jia Shidao snorted heavily. One of the two women you brought back this time? Jia Shidao snorted heavily. Song Qingshu smiled embarrassedly, but he was worried that the two women hadn't escaped as planned. That woman's identity is mysterious. She has excellent kung fu, but she pretended to be a weak woman to sneak into the Isle of Heroes. She obviously has bad intentions. Jia Shidao's eyes flashed, and his voice was full of malice. After all, she saved my life. Song Qingshu smiled embarrassedly. Don't think that I don't know what you're thinking. She's pretty. Jia Shidao glanced at him and snorted. If I told you that she ran away with another woman, and your plan to keep her as a mistress failed, would you still speak up for her? Huh. Song Qing-shu pretended to be very surprised and angry, but he was secretly delighted. Forget it. I'll look into it myself. You don't have to worry about it. You can leave now. Jia Shidao paused. Chapter 1166. Song Qing-shu's heart skipped a beat. He stopped and looked at Jia Shidao, pretending to be confused. Did you learn anything from the things on the stone wall? Jia Shidao's eyes showed a hint of expectation. Song Qing-shu was shocked. From Jia Shidao's tone, it seemed that he had arranged for Jia Baoyu to go to the stone wall. If he could command Zhang San and Li Si and the others to be obedient, what was his relationship with the second island master of the Isle of Heroes Dragonwood? Or was he one of the two masters of the Dragonwood Island? I asked you a question. Jia Shidao coughed unhappily when he saw that he was lost in thought. Song Qing-shu shook his head and said, I don't know any of the words on the stone wall. What could I learn from them? Get lost. Jia Shidao looked as if he had expected it. He snorted and said, also, before we find out who's trying to harm you, stay at home and don't go out. Song Qing-shu complained to himself. It was too hard for him to stay in the Jia mansion every day. It seemed like he had to find out everything and leave as soon as possible. After returning from Jia Shidao's study, Song Qing-shu asked a servant to lead the way. He secretly performed the soul-shifting technique and learned about the situation in the Jia mansion. The current master of the Jia mansion was Jia Shidao, who was the privy envoy of the Southern Song dynasty and the head of the military. Jia Shidao's sister was the emperor's concubine. They helped each other, and the Jia family was now very powerful. The person with the highest status in the Jia mansion was Mrs. Jia, who was the ancestor to everyone. She came from the Shi family and was the aunt of the current imperial censor, Shi Miyuan. Because Mrs. Jia was old, she had already delegated her power to her daughter-in-law, Mrs. Wang. Mrs. Wang came from the Lin Chuan Wang family, and her second brother was Wang Ziding, the commander of the front court. The Jia mansion was too big, and there were countless maids and servants. Mrs. Wang couldn't manage it all by herself, so she asked her niece, Wang Shifeng, who also came from the Lin Chuan Wang family. Wang Shifeng was married to Jia Yin, the son of Jia Shidao's brother, Jia Shi. The couple managed the Jia's mansion well. Jia Yin also had a younger sister, Jia Yingchun. She was the one that Song Qing-shu had seen previously. Her skin was supple and her nose was smooth like goose fat. Jia Shidao had 3 sons and 1 daughter. His eldest son, Jia Zhu, and his wife, Li Wan. Li Wan was born into a family of scholars. She was the second daughter of Li Shouzhong, the chancellor of the Imperial Academy. She and her husband were a good match, but her husband died soon after they were married, leaving her a widow. His second son was Jia Baoyu, but his third son, Jia Huan, was born to a concubine. He was ugly, so Jia Shidao didn't like him. His daughter, Shichuan, though born from the same mother as Jia Huan, had never been on good terms with her birth mother and brother. Instead, she was closer to Lady Wang, Jia Baoyu, and the others. Although the Jia family had many branches and leaves, the closest to Jia Shidao was his cousin, Duke Ning Jiajing. Jiajing was dedicated to cultivating and becoming a deity, so he had lived in seclusion in a Taoist temple. He had a son and a daughter. The eldest was Jia Zhen, and the youngest was Jia Shichuan. She was the youngest girl Song Qing-shu had seen, and she was still a little girl. Cultivating to become an immortal? Staying out of the world? Hearing Jia Jing's characteristics, Song Qing-shu frowned slightly. Could this be a method to deceive others? Why did this characteristic sound so similar to the 2 island masters of the Isle of Heroes? It seems that I have to find a chance to go to the Ningguo mansion and check it out. Song Qing-shu looked at the Ningguo mansion, which was only 1 wall away. The Ningguo mansion didn't have many people, and they always had only 1 son. Jia Zhen's son, Jia Rong, sounded ordinary, but he had a famous wife, Qin Keqing. Although Qin Keqing was ranked last among the 12 beauties of Jinling in Dream of the Red Chamber, there was a secret behind it. In terms of charm and popularity, she could compete with Lin Daiyu and Shui Baochai. Men even dreamed about her more than they did about Lin Daiyu and Shui Baochai. It's a pity that I didn't see her at Mother Jia's place today. Song Qingshu sighed inwardly. It was a pity that he didn't see that legendary and mysterious woman. Song Qingshu confirmed with the manservant that Lin Daiyu, Shui Baochai, and even Shi Shangyun had not moved into the Jia's mansion yet. He felt slightly regretful and secretly relieved. Fortunately, they had not come yet. Otherwise, with the identity of Jia Baoyu, he was afraid that his flaws would be discovered very soon if he dealt with so many beautiful women. After sending the manservant away, Song Qingshu originally planned to take the opportunity to sneak out of the Jia mansion to meet up with Zhou Zhuo and the others. However, he quickly dispelled this idea. It was obvious that Shiren's maidservant was loyal to her master. If Jia Baoyu didn't return, she would definitely come out to look for him. At that time, it would be bad if the entire Jia mansion was alarmed. Therefore, he decided to go back and calm Shiren down first. "Young master, you're finally back. Did old master punish you?" Shiren had been looking around the door. When she saw Song Qingshu, she hurriedly greeted him with a smile. No. Song Qingshu knew that this girl had always been meticulous, so he didn't dare to talk to her and walked inside by himself. "I prepared some snacks for young master." Before Shiren could finish speaking, Song Qingshu waved his hand and interrupted her. "No need. I'm so sleepy. I'm going to sleep. Don't disturb me later." "You don't wash up." Seeing that Song Qingshu walked in without looking back, Shiren swallowed the words she was about to say and smiled bitterly. This young master's behavior had always been unexpected. When she went to check, she found that Song Qingshu had already fallen asleep on the bed. She couldn't help but be surprised. So fast. It seems that he's really tired. After covering him with the quilt, Shiren drove the young maidservants out and slept in the outer room. Hearing that it was quiet outside, Song Qingshu, who was lying on the bed, suddenly opened his eyes and silently went outside. Shiren, who had always been alert, seemed to feel something. When she was about to open her eyes, Song Qingshu instantly sealed her sleeping acupoint. After arranging everything in the room, Song Qingshu quietly left the Jia mansion. This Jia mansion seems to be peaceful, but it is heavily guarded. There are many secret sentries. If my lightness skill was not unparalleled in the world, I'm afraid I would have been discovered. Song Qingshu looked back at the Jia mansion, and then used his lightness skill to go to the Red Sleeve courtyard where he had agreed to meet with Zhou Zhuo. In a private room of the Red Sleeve courtyard, a fair-skinned young master pushed open a corner of the window and looked at the women outside. He frowned without a trace. Compared to ordinary men, he was a little more petite, but his chest muscles were much more exaggerated than those of ordinary men. He suddenly opened his mouth, but his voice was extremely delicate. "Zhuo, you said that song? He hasn't come for so long. Did something happen to him?" Another outrageously handsome young master was sitting not far away and staring at his chest. He thought to himself, will it become so big after giving birth? Even the chest binding couldn't cover it. Chapter 1167. The two people in the room were naturally Zhou Zhuo and Qi Feng. They were brought to a house to settle down, and Zhou Zhuo escaped with Qi Feng when the guards weren't paying attention. The people on the Isle of Heroes didn't expect these two delicate women to be martial arts experts. By the time they realized what was going on, the two women were already gone. After escaping safely, Zhou Zhuo led Qi Feng to the appointed place to meet up with Song Qingshu. However, it was too conspicuous for two beautiful women to visit a brothel, so they disguised themselves as men and snuck in. Qi Feng had never been to a place like this before. Back then, Taohong, who came from a brothel in a small place, had already made her feel inferior, let alone the largest brothel in the capital. Although her experience as a mistress was different from before, she had always lived in seclusion and abided by womanhood. It was even more impossible for her to come to a place like this. Zhou Zhuo was the same. However, she was a child of the pugilistic world after all. In addition, She had been in the White Lotus Society for a while and had come into contact with people from all walks of life. Therefore, compared to Chi Fong, she was much calmer. She was the one who made arrangements to go in and out of the Red Sleeve house. The two women naturally wouldn't ask for the girls in the house to keep them company. The madam originally had some complaints, but a large ingot of silver was enough to shut her up. She immediately arranged a secluded room for them. The two women had already waited here for a few hours, but Song Qingshu showed no signs of appearing. Chi Fong couldn't sit still anymore. "Sister Chi, you seem very agitated?" Zhou also noticed that Chi Fong was more agitated than usual. Chi Fong bit her lip and said faintly, "I'm worried about water spinach." Zhou had been with her for a few days and naturally knew that water spinach was her daughter. "It's been so long. The Wan clan probably thinks that I'm dead. If water spinach doesn't see me, she'll probably be very sad." Chi Fong's heart trembled when she thought of her cute daughter. Zhou smiled. "Sister, you're confused because you're worried. Water spinach is still so young. How would she know these things?" Chi Fong was still frowning. "I'm mainly worried that Wan Gui, that bastard, will harm her," Zhou said in surprise. "As the saying goes, even a vicious tiger won't eat its cubs." I don't think so." She also knew what had happened to Chi Fong, so as she spoke, her tone became uncertain. If he can kill his wife, what else can't he do? The more Chi Fong said, the more flustered she became. "No, even if Wan Gui won't do anything to her, I must save water spinach. I can't let her grow up in a family surrounded by wolves." "Then, let's go rescue little water spinach now." At this moment, a familiar voice came from outside the window. The two girls turned around in surprise. Song Qingshu lightly jumped in from the window and looked at the two women with a smile. "Song," Chi Fong cried out in surprise, but she quickly realized that his decent wife was here, so she forcibly suppressed her excitement. "You've really recovered your martial arts." Zhou, on the other hand, did not have so many misgivings. She went up and hugged him. If she had been skeptical before, now that she saw him enter the room without a sound, Zhou completely believed him. "Yes, I've recovered." Song Qingshu stroked her soft long hair and answered gently. The two of them shared their feelings, and soon, Zhou also realized that there was a woman next to her. She blushed and pushed him away, changing the topic. "The poison of the golden ripple flower is so powerful. How did you recover?" "I comprehended the Taishan scripture on the Isle of Heroes and forced the poison out," Song Qingshu answered instinctively. "The Taishan scripture is really amazing. It can even deal with the flower of the heavenly demon." Zhou was amazed. She suddenly realized something and frowned. She said angrily, "Then when you used the poison to make Sister Chi accompany you, was that an act?" Song Qingshu knew that the situation was bad and hurriedly said, "At that time, there was still some poison left. I needed to consolidate it to prevent it from reviving." Looking at the two women's doubtful gazes, Song Qingshu hurriedly changed the topic. "I heard Sister Chi mention the water spinach. Let's go to the Wan residence now. It'll be a good time to settle the debt they caused me." Hearing this, Zhou's eyes instantly turned cold. Ma Chi-chun and Wan Gui had almost caused her husband to die without a burial place. How could she not take revenge? And that Li guy? Zhou's eyes drifted towards the north as she secretly added in her heart. The three quickly reached an agreement and quietly left the Red Sleeve courtyard under the moonlight. Because Chi Fong's martial arts were too poor, Song Qingshu carried her all the way, which made Zhou a little depressed. But Chi Fong's identity was destined to pose no threat to her. Zhou soon felt relieved. She tapped her toes and chased after them. In the past, she defeated all the heroes in the Shaolin Temple's lion-slaying convention and won the title of #1 in the world. These years, she has been concentrating on cultivating the 9 Indawa scripture. Coupled with the benefits of dual cultivation with Song Qingshu, her martial arts can be said to be better than before. Following behind Song Qingshu, she did not feel strenuous at all. Of course, besides the fact that Song Qing-shu was carrying someone, there was also the factor that he did not use his full strength, being held in Song Qing-shu's arms. Even if the two had already been intimate, Chi Fong's heart was still beating fast. She glanced at Zhou Zhiruo without a trace. Seeing that she did not show any dissatisfaction, she was a little relieved. Except for occasionally reaching out to point the way, the rest of the time, she was blushing. On his chest. It did not take long for the three of them to arrive at the Prime Minister's mansion. Even though it was the mansion of the number one person in the imperial court, the security was not as tight as the Jiao mansion. Moreover, with Chi Fong's guidance along the way, it was very easy for them to avoid some of the key guarded areas and hidden sentries. They sneaked into the Prime Minister's mansion soundlessly. In this world, regardless of whether it was the royal palace or the mansions of the ministers, they were all guarded on the outside but not on the inside. The inner chambers were where the womenfolk lived. In addition to the polygamy system of this world, in order not to be cuckolded, the men naturally wouldn't allow those strong guards to wander around the womenfolk. Let's go find the water spinach first. After placing Chi Fong on the ground, Song Qing-shu said in a low voice. He understood that if he sought revenge first, it would inevitably cause a big commotion. At that time, it would be inconvenient for Chi Fong to find her daughter. Thank you. Chi Fong looked at him gratefully, then led the way in front. This way, water spinach is usually taken care of by her wet nurse, but I don't know if there are any changes now. Not long after, the three of them arrived at the wet nurse's room. Thank the heavens, water spinach was safe and sound. After sealing the wet nurse's sleeping acupuncture point, Chi Fong ran in and tightly hugged her daughter, who was sleeping soundly in the baby's crib. Tears unconsciously flowed down her cheeks. Looking at the little girl in her arms, who was as fair as jade, Song Qing-shu couldn't help but admit the strength of genes. Although Wang Gui was a little bad, he was extraordinarily handsome. Chi Fong was also a beautiful woman with the countenance of a flower and the face of the moon. From a young age, it could be seen that their daughter was going to be a beauty. Big sister, can you let me hold the water spinach as well? Zhou Zhiruo, who was watching from the side, couldn't help but ask. Of course. Now that Chi Fong was in a good mood, she smoothly handed her daughter over. At the same time, she gave Zhou Zhiruo pointers on how to hold the child more effortlessly and make the child more comfortable. Looking at the joy and excitement in Zhou Zhiruo's eyes, Song Qing-shu couldn't help but feel a trace of tenderness in his heart. Chapter 1168. Song Qing-shu's question stunned Chi Fong. On one hand, she resented Wang Gui for abandoning her and murdering her in order to climb higher. On the other hand, the two of them had been married for so many years. It was impossible for them to not have feelings for each other. After hesitating for a long time, Chi Fong suddenly raised her head to look at him. You want me to go? Song Qing-shu couldn't help but smile. That depends on what you think. I'll listen to you. Finishing, Chi Fong's face reddened. She had gotten used to relying on this man in this period of time. Then let's go together. It's good to say goodbye to our past lives. Song Qing-shu then said to Zhou Zhiruo, Zhiruo, this is the Prime Minister's fu. If you get into a conflict with the guards in the fu and hurt water spinach, it wouldn't be good. Take water spinach out of the fu first and wait for us outside. Zhou Zhiruo was somewhat unwilling but understood that there was no other way. If she let Chi Fong take the child, her martial arts were too low. If she fell into the hands of the Prime Minister's fu, it would be easy for them to hold back. Thinking about it, it was safer for her to take the child out of the fu first. All right, be careful. Come out as soon as you finish your revenge. Finishing, she pushed off with the tip of her foot and carried the child, disappearing into the night. Let's go. Seeing Chi Fong reluctantly look in the direction Zhou Zhiruo disappeared, Song Qing-shu laughed involuntarily. Don't worry, he won't take water spinach away. Chi Fong's face reddened, and she looked away. Wang Gui's room is this way. Finishing, she ran away guiltily. Song Qing-shu leisurely followed behind her. Not long after, they arrived at a small courtyard. Returning to her previous residence, Chi Fong had mixed feelings. For a moment, she didn't know how to face the person who slept next to her with a heart like a snake. Just as she was hesitating, a man's angry shout and a woman's giggle came from a distant room. Chi Fong's expression couldn't help but change. She couldn't help but want to rush over, but there was a steady hand on her shoulder. Don't get excited. Let's wait and see first. After Song Qing-shu finished speaking, he gently held her waist. The two of them quietly flew to the roof of the room where the sound came from. They lifted the tiles and saw the situation inside. At this moment, Wan Gue was sitting on a stool in casual clothes, clutching his hand with a pained expression. He had a sinister expression as he said something to someone. Song Qing-shu followed his gaze and saw that there was a large fishing net under a beam in the room. This fishing net wasn't a real fishing net, but a trap specially made in Jianghu to catch people. At this time, there was a woman trapped in the fishing net. Due to the angle, Song Qing-shu could not see her face. He could only see that she was wearing a blue shirt with white flowers printed on it, and an embroidered apron from her chest to her knees. The color was dazzling, and there was a pair of huge golden earrings hanging from her ears, the size of a wine cup. Her attire was obviously not that of a Han woman. Perhaps it was because she was confined in a small space by the fishing net, but her voluptuous and graceful figure appeared even more charming. Her entire body was like a plump and tender peach, as if water would come out of it with a gentle pinch. In particular, the colorful belt around her waist vividly accentuated the softness of her waist and the fullness of her breasts, making men want to reach out and untie it. Song Qing-shu was surprised. He seemed to have seen this attire before, but he couldn't remember. The blue-clothed woman in the fishing net giggled and asked, "Young Master Wan, how does my spotted scorpion taste?" Her voice was soft and charming, stirring people's souls. This woman's appearance was not seen. Just based on her voluptuous and graceful figure, it was enough to make one's imagination run wild. However, hearing her voice and seeing her, one would feel that her voice was so charming that it didn't matter whether she was beautiful or ugly. So if it's her. Hearing her voice, Song Qing-shu finally knew the identity of this woman. Indigo Phoenix, the leader of the Five Immortals sect. When he was trying to save Dongfang Muxiue on the Blackwood Cliff, his inner breath was dispersed by Venerable Ming Zhang Wuji's punch. Then, Dongfang Muxiue brought him to the Five Immortals sect in Yunnan, where he lived with Indigo Phoenix for a period of time. However, Indigo Phoenix was Dongfang Muxiue's exclusive property, and Song Qing-shu didn't have a deep relationship with her. Therefore, when he first saw her clothes and figure, he only felt that they were familiar, but he didn't recognize her. However, Indigo Phoenix's voice was soft and charming, and her characteristics were too distinct. As long as a man heard it once, he would never forget it. Therefore, Song Qing-shu immediately realized who she was. Why is she here? Seeing someone familiar, Song Qing-shu was surprised and happy. However, he didn't know what was going on down there, so he could only listen and decide. UB*TCH. Wan Gue covered his hand, which was swollen. He didn't want to embarrass himself in front of the woman, so he didn't groan. However, sweat was dripping down his forehead like soybeans. Indigo Phoenix wasn't offended by his insults, as if she had experienced such situations many times. She sighed coquettishly and said, "I gave you a chance. As long as you could take off my clothes, I would obey you from now on. Who asked you to be so useless? He, demon woman, you tricked me on purpose. So, you hid a poisonous scorpion in your clothes." Wan Gui's lust had faded, and he reacted quickly. "I forgot to tell you that I've liked to keep poisonous snakes and scorpions since I was young. They're like my precious babies, and I can't bear to be separated from them. Therefore, I've always brought them with me." Indigo Phoenix stopped smiling and said coldly, "Who asked you to be so lustful? Do you think you can do whatever you want of me just because I've been caught by this stupid fishing net?" Wan Gue rolled his eyes, and his expression quickly changed. He respectfully bowed and said, "So, it's Cult Master Lon of the Five Immortals sect. I had eyes but failed to recognize Mount Tai and offended you. I hope that you, a great man of great stature, will forgive me. He was also from a Jianghu. The woman in front of him was dressed like a Miao woman, and she was good at using poison. It was easy for him to guess her identity. Old man, am I very old? Blue Phoenix touched her face and heaved a sigh of relief. Not old at all. You're as beautiful as a fairy, Wan Gue said quickly. Although she had given up on her husband, Chi Fong couldn't help but despise him when she saw how he was trying to save his life. Is she really that beautiful? Indigo Phoenix became happy. I heard that your wife is also a famous beauty. I wonder who's more beautiful compared to her? Wan Gue replied without the slightest hesitation. Naturally, cult leader Lan is more beautiful. My wife has the appearance of a willow tree, with a thick rustic air about her. How can she compare to cult leader Lan's thousands of amorous feelings? Chi Fong, who was on the roof, trembled when she heard this. She never cared about her appearance, and she wouldn't compare herself to other women. If Wan Gue was forced to say that she was like a willow tree, she wouldn't mind. However, when she saw her husband calling her a country girl, she knew that it was what he really thought. So, in his heart, I'm so unbearable. Chi Fong bit her lip so hard that it almost bled. She had always been an extremely traditional woman. Even if Wan Gue had plotted against her first, when she thought about how she had also done something to let him down, she still felt a faint sense of remorse in her heart. Especially when she recalled the time they had spent together as husband and wife. That sense of remorse grew even stronger. Chapter 1169. Feeling Chi Fong's trembling, Song Qingshu gently patted her back and comforted her. There is no need to be sad for such a man. Looking at the graceful man beside her, and then comparing it to her husband's servile appearance, Chi Fong sighed faintly in her heart. At this time, another conversation came from below. She hurriedly wiped the tears from the corner of her eyes and carefully looked down. She saw the blue phoenix smiling charmingly. Mr. Wan, you have a sweet mouth. Wan Gue had no choice but to deal with it. He noticed that the back of his hand turned from red to purple, then from purple to black, and a red line slowly crept up his arm. His heart was immediately anxious. He immediately said, I hope cult leader Londarin will not hold grudges against this lowly one and grant me the antidote first. After the poison is cured, I will accompany cult leader to chat. The blue phoenix glanced at him with a faint smile and said, Don't worry. This red line will only die when it reaches your chest. There is still time. Wan Gue was so angry that his lungs almost exploded. He thought that after the poison is cured, he would press her on the bed and F***CK her 1,000 times. How would he be able to vent his anger? However, when he thought about how many venomous snakes and insects were hidden on her white, jade-like body, he shuddered and his lust disappeared. Wan Gue's poisonous gas gradually rose. He felt a burst of dizziness. His body swayed uncontrollably. Hastily he said, Lan Jiaozhu, why did you come here today? Why don't you tell me? Right now my grandfather is the Prime Minister of the Imperial Court. He is below one person, but above tens of thousands people. His power is far from what those Jianghu sects can compare to. He was not stupid. At this point, he understood that simply begging for mercy would not be able to deal with this smiling woman. He immediately changed his strategy and used the power of the Prime Minister's residence. On one hand, it was to show his power. On the other hand, it was a threat. If she dared to harm him, the Five Immortal sect would not be able to resist the power of the Imperial Court. The Blue Phoenix scoffed, Mister, you don't have to scare me. The Five Immortal sect is far away in Yunnan. It is not within the borders of the Great Song. No matter how powerful your grandfather is, he cannot control it. It was a slip of the tongue. Wan Gue chuckled. However, you must have something to ask of me since you were visiting so late at night. Why don't we discuss it? Young master has good eyesight. I am indeed here to find something. Indigo Phoenix was trapped in the fishing net. She felt uncomfortable after staying there for a long time. As she spoke, she changed her position and revealed her 2 snow-white feet. Song Qingshu was secretly amazed. Tao Wu, and twin of the Tang dynasty, was also wearing white clothes and bare feet. This could be considered a classic unsolved mystery of wuxia. They ran around without shoes, but their feet were clean. Song Qingshu had no idea how they did it. Cult Master Lan, please speak. When Wan Gui saw that the red thread was about to reach his armpit, he instantly became anxious. Indigo Phoenix said calmly, "Young master, you know that we, the Five Immortals sect, love to study poisons. Not long ago, I heard that the Golden Snake King, who is unparalleled in martial arts, was defeated by young master's golden rippling flower. Therefore, I am curious and came to your residence to ask for 1 or 2 golden rippling flowers to study." Golden ripple flower? Song Qingshu's heart skipped a beat. Then, he quickly realized that Indigo Phoenix was Dongfang Mushue's subordinate. This time, she came to look for the golden rippling flower. She was probably instructed by her to find the antidote. Golden rippling flower? Wan Gui was also shocked. He quickly smiled and said, "How difficult is that?" After he finished speaking, he ran to the cabinet and carefully took out a sealed wooden box. He placed it on the table. "Cult Master Lan, there is a golden rippling flower in this box. As long as Cult Master Lan gives me the antidote for the spotted scorpion, I will give you this golden rippling flower. How about that?" Wan Gui stared at Indigo Phoenix, afraid that she would not agree. "No problem." Indigo Phoenix smiled sweetly. Wan Gui heaved a long sigh of relief. "However, you have to let me see what's in the box first. Otherwise, who am I going to reason with if you take something to fool me?" Indigo Phoenix said with a smile. Wan Gui quickly waved his hand and said, "Cult Master Lan is an expert in using poisons. You should know that the pollen and fragrance of the golden rippling flower are extremely poisonous. Once I open this wooden box, both of us will be poisoned." Indigo Phoenix giggled and said, "Young Master Wan, what are you talking about? We, who use poisons, are not afraid of our own poisons. Why don't you just take out the antidote and prepare it?" Song Qingshu, who was on the roof, could not help but laugh. Indigo Phoenix had taken such a big detour to trick him into giving her the antidote for the golden rippling flower. She achieved her goal without alerting Wan Gui. She was indeed a smart lady. Wan Gui smiled bitterly and said, "The golden rippling flower is the flower of the heavenly demon. There is no antidote in this world." "There is no antidote," Indigo Phoenix exclaimed. Her face turned pale. She knew that Wan Gui had no reason to lie to her. Otherwise, he could have poisoned her with the golden rippling flower and threatened her with the antidote. Initially, she and Dongfang Mushue were still hopeful about the antidote for the golden rippling flower. However, after hearing Wan Gui's words, their last hope was shattered. It had been some time since Song Qingshu was poisoned. Since there was no antidote for the golden rippling flower, Song Qingshu would have been dead for a long time. Thinking about Dongfang Mushue's request before she left and the worry that was deliberately hidden in her eyes, Indigo Phoenix could not help but sigh. Master's heart is higher than the sky. She finally found someone, but who knew that they would not be fated to be together. If she knew about this, who knows what kind of irrational thing she would do. If it was Dongfang Mushue in the past, Indigo Phoenix would not be so worried. She was unparalleled and was the cult master of the Sun-Moon God sect. Who in the world dared to provoke her? However, she was severely injured now. Her strength had not even recovered to 30% of her peak. In addition, she had lost her position as the cult master, and her identity could not be exposed. If anything were to happen, she would not be able to escape a tragic ending. Wan Gui was a shrewd person. Seeing that Indigo Phoenix's expression changed when she heard that there was no antidote for the golden rippling flower, she stopped in her tracks. She looked at Indigo Phoenix in the fishing net and sneered, "I almost fell for your trap. So you are here for Song Qingshu." Indigo Phoenix knew that her reaction had exposed a flaw. She was still immersed in her worry. She only snorted coldly in response. "Song Qingshu is really lucky with women. I heard that not only is his wife the most beautiful woman in the world, but he also has many women by his side. I do not believe it. who knew that after I saw it with my own eyes, I had no choice but to believe it. In Yangzhou, the daughter of the Leaf family sacrificed her reputation in public to save him. Then, a fairy-like woman saved him. Now, there is cult Master Lawn from the Five Immortals sect. Looking at Indigo Phoenix's milky white skin, Wan Gue revealed a strange smile. Tisk tisk, such luck with women really makes men jealous. Since there is no antidote for the golden rippling flower, don't even think about getting rid of the poison in your body. Just wait for your death. Indigo Phoenix sneered. Wan Gue smiled and shook his head. Although there is no antidote for the golden rippling flower, there is an antidote for this spotted scorpion. Moreover, the antidote should be with you. Chapter 1170. Song Qing-shu, who was on the rooftop, did not know whether to laugh or cry. The Indigo Phoenix was right. No matter how charming she was, there would be countless venomous snakes and insects hiding underneath her clothes. It would be strange if a man was not scared on the spot. Moreover, it was said that the Miao women were loyal and they were especially good at using venomous spells. If a man was greedy for one night of pleasure and got poisoned by the Miao woman's lover spell, he would have to bid farewell to other women. Wan Gue angrily said, "Don't think that I really don't dare to touch you." The Indigo Phoenix giggled. "Bring it on then. Don't just talk. I forgot to tell you that other than venomous snakes, spiders, and scorpions, I also have golden silkworm venomous poison and jade silkworm venomous poison. Mr. is half a man of the pugilistic world. You should have heard of it." Not to mention Wan Gue. Even Song Qing-shu couldn't help but click his tongue when he heard this. My goodness, the gold silkworm poison and jade silkworm poison are toxic poisons in the Golden Book that aren't inferior to the golden ripple flower. During the Dragon Boat Festival in the Miao Stockade Village, hundreds of insects were collected and placed in earthen jars to kill each other. A year later, when the jars were opened, only a kind of golden silkworm was left. After feeding it with golden leaf for a few months, it would turn into a pile of golden dung. The dung was the golden silkworm's poison, which could be said to be the most poisonous thing in the world. Those who were poisoned would feel as if thousands of insects were biting their body. The pain was unbearable, and they could neither live nor die. The green silkworm poison goo, peacock gallbladder, and crane's crown red were listed by the Poison Hand King of Medicine as 3 of the 9 great forbidden drugs in the world. The egg powder of the green silkworm poison goo was the Miao tribe's poison. It was colorless and odorless. The poison powder did not pass through flesh and blood, so its toxicity was not strong. There were ways to neutralize it, but it had to pass through flesh and blood to be fatal. As soon as the human body was covered with the poison powder, there would be a faint layer of dark green. If the peacock gall and crane's crown red were added, it would not show any color. However, after mixing them together, the poison would enter the heart, and there was no antidote. However, the poison of the golden silkworm parasite was in the form of a powder. If the opponent's internal energy was much higher than the poisoner's, it was very easy for the poison powder to bounce back and cause harm to the poisoner. As for the green silkworm parasite, it needed to be combined with the peacock's gallbladder and crane's crown red in order to maximize its power. Although there was no antidote, as long as someone was willing to sacrifice their life to suck out the poison blood, they could still save the poisoned person's life. So, in comparison, the golden ripple sunflower was more impossible to guard against. Not only could it kill without leaving a trace, but even a deity would not be able to save it. Wan Gui's face was malevolent, obviously unable to do anything to the thorny rose in front of him. But he was still crafty and cunning, quickly coming up with an idea. "You're covered in poison. I indeed do not dare to touch you directly. But now that you are trapped in the fishing net, I will have someone throw you into the pond in the courtyard to soak for a few hours. When those poisonous snakes and insects come into contact with the water, won't they flee without a trace? Not to mention the golden silkworm parasite and green silkworm parasite on your body. They have long been washed clean by the water." The Indigo Phoenix's expression changed slightly. She knew that if she was really soaked in the water, she would lose 90% of her strength. Since things had come to this, she could only force herself to say, it's a pity that you don't have that much time to wait. You have been poisoned by my spotted scorpion poison. Once the red line reaches your chest, you will die immediately." Wan Gui tore open his clothes to take a look. The red line had already reached his armpit. His face instantly turned gloomy. "Give me the antidote, and I will let you go. How about that?" The indigo phoenix chuckled. "Mister, do you think I am a 3-year-old girl? This is your territory. If I really give you the antidote, will you let me go?" Seeing that the red line was getting closer and closer to his chest, Wan Gui knew that it was too late to call for the people in the residence. He immediately went into a frenzied state. "All right, since I am going to die, I will play with the Golden Snake King's woman before I die. It's good to be a playboy." Chi Fong, who was on the roof, was shaking with anger. She immediately turned around and looked at Song Qing-shu. Seeing that he was gloomy, she could not help but apologize softly. "I am sorry." Song Qing-shu shook his head. "He is the shameless one. What has it got to do with you?" The indigo phoenix spat. "Firstly, I am not the Golden Snake King's woman. Secondly, if you want to play with me, I am afraid you don't have the ability." Wan Gui raised his sword and approached her step by step. Hearing what she said, he laughed sinisterly. "I know that cult leader Lan is proud of his poisonous body, but I will first use my sword to cut open your clothes and strip you naked. This young master will like to see where you can hide those venomous snakes, venomous insects, and whatnot from head to toe, unless—" As he spoke, he looked between the indigo phoenix's legs. His gaze was extremely perverted. Seeing him being so rude, the indigo phoenix was furious. Although she had a way to protect herself, even if she was stripped naked, it would inevitably damage her chastity. Although she looked like a slut, she valued her chastity very much. How would she be willing to be taken advantage of by such a despicable person? "My skin is covered with the poisonous powder of the golden silkworm. If you are not afraid of death, you could try to touch me." The indigo phoenix said coldly. She did not want him to see her body, so she threatened him first. "So what?" Wan Gui's eyes revealed a tinge of madness. He pointed at the red line that was slowly moving toward his chest. "I'm going to die anyway, so what if I am poisoned by the golden silkworm? As long as I can have a taste of Cult Master Lan before I die, when I go to the underworld in the future, I will let him know that not only did he die in my hands, but also that his woman was played by me. So what if his martial arts are matchless and famous in the world? In front of me, Wan Gui, he is a complete failure, a green-haired bastard, haha." Seeing that Wan Gui was getting closer, the indigo phoenix's expression finally changed. If a person did not care about life and death, there was really no way to threaten him. Crack! A crisp sound of cloth tearing was heard. The indigo phoenix's sleeve had fallen to the ground, revealing her fair arm. The indigo phoenix exclaimed. She quickly turned her body to block his view. "TSK, TSK, TSK. This skin looks like it was soaked in milk. Song is really lucky." Wan Gui's Adam's apple moved. He swallowed a mouthful of saliva. He raised his sword towards the indigo phoenix's chest again. The indigo phoenix was angry and anxious. She was hesitating if she should take out the antidote for the spotted scorpion to temporarily calm him down so that she could negotiate with him. Anyway, the antidote would only be completely detoxified after 7 days. She was not afraid of giving him some first. He would not have any bargaining chips when the time came. At this moment, a teasing voice came from the room. "I heard that you want me to be a green-haired bastard." Hearing this voice, the indigo phoenix turned around in surprise, but Wan Gui looked as if he had seen a ghost. "Song Qing-shu? How is that possible? There is no antidote for the golden ripple flower. How are you still alive?" Song Qing-shu said plainly, "With your pitiful knowledge, it's hard to explain to you." After he finished speaking, he ignored him and walked towards the indigo phoenix. With a wave of his hand, a sharp sword aura sliced through the fishing net. The indigo phoenix screamed and fell out. As she was suspended in midair, she lost her balance and couldn't react in time. Her entire body fell to the ground. Song Qing-shu instinctively wanted to help her up, but he didn't know why he retracted his hand halfway. Blue Phoenix fell to the ground and groaned in pain. Chapter 1171. Indigo Phoenix's voice was delicate and gentle. Any man who heard it would inevitably feel protective towards her. However, Song Qing-shu smiled calmly and said, "Cult leader Lan, you have the gold silkworm venom and jade silkworm venom on you. How would I dare to help you?" Previously, he had been poisoned by the golden ripple flower, and even now, he still had lingering fears. Song Qing-shu did not want to be poisoned again. Even though he had successfully cultivated the supreme mystery scripture and could be said to be invulnerable to all poisons, it would still take some effort to force out the poison. He was not a masochist, so why would he seek trouble for himself? The blue phoenix said softly, "These two poisons are only effective against other men. They are not effective against you." Why? Song Qing-shu did not understand. Have you forgotten about the 5 treasure flower honey wine that I treated you to at the 5 Immortals sect? After you drink it, you will not have to worry about the poison in my body anymore. The blue phoenix smiled sweetly. Song Qing-shu's heart skipped a beat. The blue phoenix's martial arts were not very good. The reason why people in the martial world were afraid of her was because she was good at using poison. If she let him drink the 5 treasure flower honey wine, wouldn't she be defenseless against him? Does she trust me that much? Looking at the blue phoenix's charming face, Song Qing-shu could not help but think, or is it because of Dongfang Muxue that she loves me and her dog? While Song Qing-shu was absent-minded, Wan Gue, who was at the side, saw that the situation was far from good and broke into a run. As he ran, he opened his mouth and was about to call out someone. Unfortunately, he had just opened his mouth when the remaining words were sealed by Song Qing-shu's finger. "You were so powerful in front of sect leader Lan just now. Why are you so cowardly now?" Song Qing-shu said mockingly. "Umph." Wan Gue turned his head. Although he was servile in front of the blue phoenix for a while, that was based on the premise that he had the hope of getting the antidote. However, he knew that no matter how much he begged, it would be useless. Moreover, he was a very strong person. Naturally, he would not lose face by admitting defeat. Song Qing-shu's acupoint sealing technique was extremely brilliant. It only prevented him from shouting loudly, but it was not a problem for him to speak normally. "Sect leader Lan, give him the antidote to suppress the poison first. It won't be fun if he dies so quickly," Song Qing-shu said to Indigo Phoenix as he looked at the red line that was almost at Wan Gue's chest. "This person caused you so much trouble. Do you really want to give him the antidote?" Blue Phoenix asked doubtfully. However, she still took out a porcelain bottle from her pocket and passed it over. Feeling the residual warmth of the small porcelain bottle, Song Qing-shu smiled and said, "Letting a die like this is too easy on him." Indigo Phoenix was stunned. She smiled and said, "That's right. It's too easy for him." The 5 Immortals sect that she belonged to was regarded as an evil sect by the people of the righteous path. Naturally, their behavior was also very strange. Thus, she quickly agreed with Song Qing-shu's opinion. Song Qing-shu walked to Wan Gue's side. He opened the bottle stopper and sprinkled some black powder on the wound on the back of Wan Gue's hand. The antidote was effective. Not long after, black blood slowly seeped out of the wound and dripped onto the ground. As more and more black blood seeped out, the red line on Wan Gue's arm slowly moved down to the crook of his arm and then back to his wrist. Seeing that his life was saved, Wan Gue finally heaved a sigh of relief. Only then did he realize that his entire body was drenched in cold sweat. "I have something to ask you," Song Qing-shu said. "How did you guys kill Diyan?" This was also the reason why he came to Lin and to find Wan Gue. Other than avenging himself, he also wanted to seek justice for Diyan. Wan Gue's expression changed. He quickly said, "What Diyan? I don't know what you're talking about. Are you still going to quibble at this time? Taohong has already told you everything." Song Qing-shu looked at him coldly. "Taohong?" Wan Gue's heart skipped a beat, and he immediately became silent. "Cult leader Lan, you should have a poison that can make people wish they were dead, right? Since young Master Wan is so stubborn, let him suffer a little," said Song Qing-shu indifferently when he saw Wan Gue remain silent. "He, the 5 Immortals sect, may not have other things, but we have all kinds of poisons that can torture people. Although Indigo Phoenix was smiling, her eyes were filled with coldness. One had to know that the way Wan Gui treated her just now had provoked her killing intent. If it wasn't for Song Qing-shu, she would have sent him to hell long ago. Seeing Indigo Phoenix's expression, Wan Gui could not help but shudder. He knew that it would not be good for him to fall into this woman's hands. He quickly said, "After my grandfather returned to power, he sent people to find us." Song Qing-shu pulled Indigo Phoenix back and listened to him continue. "In addition, we got into some trouble in Jingzhou. Hence, we decided to move our family to Linen and changed our name. It was quite a comfortable life. Who knew that one day, Dian would come knocking on our door? He said he wanted to see Qi Fong. He and Qi Fong were childhood friends. How could I let him see them and let them rekindle their relationship? However, I don't know what happened to Dian. He was no longer the silly boy that I threw into jail with a few tricks. Moreover, he was very skilled in martial arts. The experts in the Prime Minister's residence were no match for him. So, I changed my strategy and agreed to let him see Qi Fong to calm him down. Then, I took the opportunity to poison him with the golden ripple flower." Song Qing-shu's face was gloomy. He had personally experienced the poison of the golden ripple flower. Even someone of his cultivation level could not withstand it, let alone Dian. The golden ripple flower is indeed powerful. Soon, Dian died from the poison. Wan Gui had a proud expression as he talked about this. It was obvious that he had used a trick to defeat a martial arts expert. This made him very proud. "Brother D, I should not have let you come alone." Song Qing-shu suppressed his anger and asked in a deep voice, "Where did you put Di Yun's body?" "Body?" Wan Gui knew that he had no chance of survival today, so he no longer had any misgivings. He sneered. That stinking brat was a toad lusting for swan meat. He'd dare to have designs on my wife and even dare to hit me just because he was skilled in martial arts. This young master killed him. Of course, I chopped him up and fed him to the dogs. "What?" Song Qing-shu flew into a rage and grabbed Wan Gui's neck. He only needed to exert force, and he would be able to take Wan Gui's life in an instant. A trace of joy flashed in Wan Gui's eyes. Song Qing-shu frowned and instantly understood what Wan Gui was thinking. "I know that you want nothing more than for me to kill you and give you a quick death. I have to admit that as a bad person, you do have some awareness of failure." Wan Gui spat out a mouthful of bloody phlegm and sneered. "I'm not a fool. I know that you won't let me go, so why would I beg you? However, this life of mine was worth it. I stole someone else's sweetheart and killed my love rival. Even though I've only lived for 30 years, I've enjoyed all the riches and fortune in the world. Of course, if I killed the invincible Golden Snake King and played with his woman." As he spoke, he glanced at the Indigo Phoenix with a greedy look in his eyes. "That couldn't be more perfect. Who knew that God's plans would go awry? You were poisoned by the golden ripple flower, and yet you didn't die. How could you not die?" Wan Gui's handsome face became extremely hideous as he spoke. Chapter 1172. Hearing his wife's name, Wan Gui turned around and stared at the door. The door creaked open, and a young woman with a face full of tears walked in. "You're still alive?" Wan Gui was in disbelief. "Are you disappointed that I'm not dead?" Qi Fong wiped the tears off her face and bit her lip. The blue phoenix looked at the young woman in front of her in shock. She then looked at Song Qing-shu thoughtfully. She seemed to be smiling, but she wasn't. Wan Gui's expression changed. Finally, he squeezed out a smile. "What are you talking about? I'm happier than anyone that you're safe and sound. Are you still trying to lie to me?" Qi Fong said sadly. "Taoong has already told me everything. You try to kill your wife just to curry favor. You're despicable and shameless." Wan Gui's face twitched, but his attention was on Taoong, whom his wife had mentioned. When he recalled that Song Qing-shu had also mentioned her before, he suddenly understood. "I was wondering how you could be safe and sound. So it turns out that you've hooked up with that Song fellow. You're really fickle and don't abide by the virtue of a woman. You..." Qi Fong was shaking in anger. She was speechless. Song Qing-shu did not speak at the side. He wanted Qi Fong to see her husband's true colors. After a long time, Qi Fong took a deep breath and her rapidly rising and falling chest gradually calmed down. I'm not here to argue with you today. When you arranged for Tao Hong to kill me, the relationship between us as husband and wife has long been severed. I came back this time to take the water spinach away. Secondly, I want to ask, my senior is such a kind and honest person. Why did you treat him so cruelly? Why? Wang Gui laughed. You're asking me why? When the two of you came to the Wan residence, everyone in the residence was mesmerized by your beauty. When I first saw you, I swore to myself that I would get you in this lifetime. Unfortunately, even though I thought I was handsome and had a good family background, I didn't know that you only had eyes for that silly boy. I was so angry when I saw the two of you being so intimate. In order to obtain you, I naturally have to get rid of Di Yun, that stumbling block. That was Junior Marshal Brotherson's plan. Senior Marshal Brother Zhou and Senior Marshal Brother Bu pretended to be rapists and lured Di Yun into Tao Hong's room to save her. It was Wu Qin who had personally placed the gold and silver artifacts under this silly boy's bed. If we didn't use this trick, how could we have kept you in the Wan residence? Qi Fong felt dizzy and her vision darkened. Her husband's words were like sharp knives stabbing into her heart. She couldn't help but cry out, I've wronged you, I've wronged you. Her body swayed, and she was about to fall. Song Qingshu hastily reached out to support her. He heard her say, when I heard Prince Song talking about this matter, I didn't quite believe it. I thought he was deliberately deceiving me. Now I finally understand that my husband is actually such a despicable and vicious person. Her voice was very bitter. At this moment, Wang Gui's attention was completely focused on Song Qingshu's hand that was supporting her. When he heard his wife talk about other men, his eyes were about to spit fire. Take your stinky hand off me. He pretended to pounce on Song Qingshu, but unfortunately, he had been poisoned by the indigo phoenix and was already dizzy. Instead, he fell onto a chair. Song Qingshu ignored him and looked at Qi Fong instead, saying, It's fine that he plotted against me. For your sake, I can let him go. However, he harmed Di Yun, so I have to avenge Brother Di. Qi Fong bit her lip so hard that it almost bled. Her eyes glistened with tears. I've let Senior Marshal Brother down. Even if he didn't do anything, I would have avenged him. Song Qingshu moved closer to her ear and said, Wan Gui knows that he's going to die, so he can't wait to be freed. Brother Di was harmed so badly by him. Killing him like this would be letting him off too easily. Therefore, I will use other methods to take revenge on him later. Thinking of her childhood sweetheart, Qi Fong glared at Wan Gui with hatred. You don't have to worry about me at all. You can take revenge however you want. A faint smile appeared on Song Qingshu's face as he said softly, But I might offend you later. Don't be angry after this. Of course I won't be angry. Qi Fong was stunned. She thought to herself, I can't wait to be happy that you've avenged Senior Marshal Brother. Why would I be angry? Remember what you're saying now. Song Qingshu chuckled and walked in front of Wan Gui. He looked down at him from above and said, Do you want to know why I didn't die after being poisoned by the golden ripple flower? Wan Gui snorted, but there was a tinge of curiosity in his eyes. The indigo phoenix, who was beside him, also giggled. Young Master Wan, even I'm curious. I think I'm an expert in using poison, but if I were poisoned by the golden ripple flower, I wouldn't be able to do anything. There's no harm in telling cult leader Lon. Just don't blame me for being rash later. Song Qingshu had a strange expression on his face. He then said, There's no real cure in this world. Although the golden ripple flower is overbearing, there's something that can temporarily restrain its poison. What is it? Wan Gui couldn't help but ask. Song Qingshu looked behind him. Qi Fong was already blushing. He then said to Wan Gui, a woman's, even though he didn't say the last two words loudly. Everyone in the room practiced martial arts. Everyone had sharp ears and eyes. They heard it clearly. The indigo phoenix blushed and couldn't help but spit. Wan Gui seemed to have thought of something. He looked at his wife beside him, and his expression changed instantly. Song Qingshu didn't seem to know what he was feeling at the moment. He continued, Back in Yangzhou, I was poisoned by your golden ripple flower. You guys searched the mountains and the seas. I was like a stray dog. However, by chance, I actually boarded your wife's ship. Your wife is really a kind woman. When she saw me in trouble, her heart was moved. By chance, she found out that human milk could restrain the poison in my body. She didn't care about a woman's reputation to detoxify the poison in my body. She really has the heart of a bodhisattva. The more Song Qing-shu praised Qi Fong, the angrier Wan Gui felt. He glared at Qi Fong. No man could tolerate his wife using such a method to save another man. Qi Fong was embarrassed and anxious. Why did Song Qing-shu say this in front of others? One of them was her husband. Even though the two of them had severed all ties, she still felt strange in her heart. Looking at Wan Gui's ferocious expression, Song Qing-shu smiled in satisfaction. He continued, "Maybe God couldn't bear to see you do so many evil things. So you poisoned me. God arranged for your wife to detoxify me. As the saying goes, Zhou Lang's brilliant plan brought peace to the world. You suffered a double loss." Wan Gui was good at scheming. He quickly understood what Song Qing-shu was thinking. It was obvious that Song Qing-shu was purposely provoking him. Therefore, he suppressed his anger and pretended to be generous. He said, "Fong Er has always been kind. Even if a dog by the road was hurt, she would help it. Saving you is naturally nothing. Since she has to squeeze out the milk and throw it away, it's not a big deal to give you what she is about to throw out." Song Qing-shu smiled strangely. "Did I tell you that she squeezed out the milk and gave it to me? The golden ripple flower's poison is so domineering. The time it takes effect is not fixed. How could she squeeze it out every time?" Wan Gui's expression changed. A bad premonition rose in his heart. Song Qing-shu's following words were like a heavy hammer striking his heart. "Your wife has the heart of a bodhisattva. In order to save me, she just let me hug it and drink it." Chapter 1173. Blue Phoenix looked at her with her mouth agape. She thought to herself that this woman looked gentle and quiet on the surface, but she was actually so bold and unrestrained in her bones. "You." Wan Gui almost fainted from anger. Song Qing-shu said coldly, "If I remember correctly, you said that you wanted me to be a green-haired tortoise?" Wan Gui's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. He was just talking dirty in front of Blue Phoenix. He didn't expect the reality to be so ironic. He wanted to do something to express his anger, but he realized that he couldn't do anything. "Qi Fong, come here." Song Qing-shu waved at Qi Fong. Qi Fong looked hesitant as she looked at her husband. Although she didn't know what Song Qing-shu wanted to do, she had a bad feeling about it. "Come here," Song Qing-shu repeated again, his voice filled with an unquestionable meaning. Qi Fong bit her lips, but in the end, she still walked over slowly. She was just about to say something to dissolve the awkwardness when Song Qing-shu stretched out his arm and pulled her into his embrace. "Song." She was shocked. Just as she said one word, her lips were blocked by Song Qing-shu. "MMM." Qi Fong's eyes were wide open. There was only one thought in her mind. How can this be? My husband is still here. Although she had already decided to cut ties with Wan Gui, they had been married for so many years. It wasn't easy to change those subconscious reactions. Qi Fong didn't dare to look at her husband's eyes. She could only close her eyes. However, her slightly trembling eyelashes showed that she wasn't calm. Disobedient, fickle, ****. Wan Gui was about to explode, especially when he saw that his wife didn't resist at all. Instead, she closed her eyes and looked like she was enjoying it. Feeling Qi Fong's body tremble, Song Qing-shu turned his head to look at Wan Gui, his eyes full of ridicule as he said, "Your first reaction was not to come forward and save your wife, but to insult and blame her. Ha! Is it because you know you are not my match, so you can only turn to your weaker wife to cover up your incompetence?" "Of course not, I. Wan Gui's mind was a mess. He wanted to refute, but his opponent's words were like a knife cutting into his bones. It was as if all his ugliness had been exposed to the sunlight. As the ancient saying goes, a tooth for a tooth, an eye for an eye. Since you wanted me to be a green-furred tortoise just now, then..." Song Qing-shu's voice was as cold as ice. Di Yun's tragic death, his own narrow escape from death, and his earlier arrogance caused old and new hatred to surge in his heart. A trace of ruthlessness surged in his eyes. I can only let you be a green-furred tortoise for once. As soon as he finished speaking, his hand violently reached into Chi Fong's clothes. No! Chi Fong grabbed his hand and looked at him pleadingly. Not here. Killing him would be too easy on him. Don't you want to seek justice for yourself? And Dian? That's the only way to take revenge on him. Song Qing-shu pressed her down on the table and looked at her with a burning gaze. He lowered his head and spoke in a voice that only the two of them could hear. Senior. Chi Fong bit her lips as she thought about Di Yun's tragic ending. She squeezed out a word from her throat. All right. She raised her fair arms and wrapped them around Song Qingshu's neck. Wan Gui's chest heated up as he witnessed this, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. Indigo Phoenix was dumbfounded too. She was blushing, but she was secretly impressed. This man is indeed a hero. He's so evil, no wonder Master likes him. Song Qingshu did not intend to let Wan Gui go just like that. He looked at Wan Gui's crotch and mocked. You actually had a reaction when you saw your wife being taken by another man. I don't want to be a man like you. He raised his hand, and a shapeless sword aura shot out. Wan Gui screamed in pain and held his legs as blood flowed out uncontrollably. The damage to the man was too great. Wan Gui's screams of pain broke through his sealed acupoints. The guard and the residents were alerted when they heard his screams. Song Qingshu knew it was about time when he heard countless people rushing over. He went over to help Chi Fong tidy up her messy dress gently and carried her in his arms. Chi Fong's cheeks were flushed, and she did not dare to look at anyone else. She buried her face in Song Qingshu's chest and acted like an ostrich that did not care about what was going on outside. Hugging Chi Fong, Song Qingshu said to Wan Gui, Today is the first day of revenge. Rest well. I'll come and find you next time. Demon, you're a demon. Wan Gui rolled around in a pool of blood. It was unknown whether it was because of the pain or fear, but his handsome face had completely changed shape. Demon? Song Qingshu stopped and left behind a sentence. If people respect me, I will respect them tenfold. Those who respect others will be respected. Those who don't respect others will receive a taste of their own medicine. When he finished the last word, he had already disappeared from the room with Chi Fong and the Indigo Phoenix. Soon, Machi Wu rushed over with some people. Seeing Wan Gui's miserable state, he was shocked and angry. Go find a doctor. No, take my name card and summon the imperial physician. Guier, who did this to you? Grandpa will take revenge for you. Machi Wu hugged Wan Gui with a murderous look on his face. He didn't like Wan Jinshan, the bastard son, but this grandson of his, Wan Gui's, handsome appearance and meticulous shrewdness was very much to his liking. For the past 2 years, he had been deliberately grooming Wan Gui and had even planned to use him to form a marriage alliance with a wealthy family in the capital. Who knew that Wan Gui would be tortured into a cripple tonight? Naturally, the marriage alliance was ruined. How could he take this lying down? Song Qingshu, it's Song Qingshu. He's back for revenge. He's back for revenge. Wan Gui cried out in shock. His whole body trembled violently, as if he had seen something extremely terrifying. Machi Wu's expression changed, and he hurriedly waved his hand to signal his subordinates to leave. When only the grandfather and grandson were left in the room, he asked with a serious face, Didn't Song Qingshu die from the golden ripple flower? How could it be him? It's absolutely true. I would recognize him even if he turned into ashes. Wan Gui's voice was still trembling as he roughly recounted what had just happened. However, he deliberately omitted the part that involved his wife, Chi Fong. After all, such a matter was a great humiliation to a man. Even his closest family member would be unable to speak of it. Grandpa, you must take revenge for your grandson. Machi Wu didn't immediately respond. After a long silence, he slowly said, Pretend this matter never happened. Do not mention to anyone that you saw Song Qingshu today. Why? Wan Gui looked at him in disbelief. He was so agitated that blood spurted out from between his legs. He had originally thought that although his martial arts were inferior to Song Qingshu's, he had the backing of the prime minister. Using the power of the government, he would definitely take revenge for today's humiliation. Who knew that his grandfather would pour a bucket of cold water on his head? Today, the hand-drawn versions of the women that had appeared in the recent chapters were published on the official account. Many people were dissatisfied with Xiao Long news pictures. Speaking of which, are they that bad? I clearly feel that they are quite beautiful and fairy-like. Chapter 1174. Machi Ruo stood up and gazed towards the distant imperial palace. During this period of time, Song Qingshu's life and death has already become the focus of all the various powers. Everyone is fighting over it, so we cannot let some people know that Song Qingshu is still alive at this critical moment, at least not during this period of time. Otherwise, it will ruin our great plans. Wang Gui almost cried. He was already in such a miserable state, yet he could not take his revenge openly. There were a few moments when he could not help but tell the truth about what had happened tonight, but when he thought of Machi Ruo's usual treacherous personality, he forcibly held back the impulse. In Machi Ruo's heart, only power was the most important. Nothing else could be mentioned in the same breath. The impact of what had happened in Yangzhou this time was extremely great. The people in the imperial court, led by Han Xingzhou, had brought up an impeachment against Machi Ruo. Those princesses of the washing clothes brothel who had previously received favors from Song Qingshu were also causing a ruckus in the inner palace. Coupled with the Golden Snake Camp's unusual movements in the north, the surrounding countries had all sent envoys over to pressure the southern Song dynasty. Machi Ruo's current situation was extremely bad. However, Machi Ruo's relationship with Zhao Go had always been better. Not only did Li Kaxiu attach herself to Zhao Go with the land of Jianghuai, she had also sent people to escort her daughter to Lin and to offer her as a concubine. These were all solid gains, so Zhao Go had tacitly approved of her previous actions. No matter how fierce the attacks of those political enemies were, Machi Ruo remained unmoved. Of course, all of this was built on the premise that Song Qingshu was already dead. No matter how powerful the world-renowned Golden Snake King was, he was just a fleeting cloud after his death. Many people would not continue to fight for a dead person. But if Song Qingshu was still alive, then the entire situation would change. Those political enemies would have enough reason to persevere, and some of the neutral parties would also waver. Moreover, Song Qingshu himself was the most troublesome enemy. At that time, Machi Ruo could not be more clear about whether Zhao Go would still help her withstand the pressure. Machi Ruo had been in and out of the political scene for many years. When she heard the news that Song Qingshu was still alive, she quickly thought of a solution in her panic. As long as she suppressed this news for a while, when Li Kaxiu's daughter officially entered the palace in 2 days, then what was done could not be undone. She would completely bind Zhao Go to her. The completion of the marriage meant that Li Kaxiu had completely submitted, and all of this originally belonged to Song Qingshu and the Golden Snake Camp. This way, the Southern Song dynasty and the Golden Snake Camp would have an irreconcilable conflict, especially that Miss Li from the Li family did not hesitate to sacrifice her daughter's reputation to save him. The two of them must have had an affair long ago. When Song Qingshu found out about all of this, how could he let it go? Even if Song Qingshu weighed the pros and cons and was willing to let it go, how could the soldiers under him endure this? How could he convince the people in the future? Song Qingshu, as a hero of a region, was already in a difficult position, let alone Zhao Go, as the emperor of the Song dynasty. It was impossible for the emperor to be wrong. Even if he was wrong, he would not admit it. When the time came for the dignity of the royal family, even if Zhao Go knew it was inappropriate, he would still brace himself, just like how he killed Yu Fei back then. Looking at Wang Gui's dejected look, Machi Ruo consoled him. Don't worry, I will secretly send experts to hunt down Song Qingshu and avenge you. Wang Gui smiled bitterly, thinking that Song Qingshu's martial arts were unparalleled. Without using the power of the government, how could a few experts be a match for him? However, he did not dare to say this out loud. He could only pretend to be touched and said, "Thank you, grandfather." Song Qingshu brought Chi Fong and Indigo Phoenix to meet up with Zhou Zhirua outside the Prime Minister's residence. Zhou Zhirua saw that there was an additional woman beside her husband and could not help but be stunned. Song Qingshu quickly introduced the two women to each other. Indigo Phoenix smiled and said, "I have long heard that sect leader Mei Zhou defeated many heroes in the Shaolin Temple. You have really brought glory to us girls." As she spoke, her gaze fell on the baby in Zhou Zhirua's arms. She was secretly shocked. Song Qingshu and her have a child already? I have to tell Master about this when I return. Zhou Zhirua had always been good at reading people's expressions. She noticed Indigo Phoenix's gaze and immediately understood what was going on. She returned the water spinach to Chi Fong and smiled as she replied, "I have long heard of the name of sect leader Lan of the Five Immortals sect. I did not expect you to be such a charming beauty." Indigo Phoenix then realized that the baby was Chi Fong's child. She could not help but secretly sigh in relief for Dongfang Muxue. Looking at her daughter, sleeping soundly, Chi Fong's tears uncontrollably slid down her cheeks. Water Spinach, it's all Mother's fault that your ill-fated Uncle Water Spinach ended up in such a miserable state. Song Qingshu's face was also gloomy. Diyun, I will make Wan Gue beg for death to comfort your soul in heaven. What Wan Gue said just now might not be the truth, Indigo Phoenix suddenly said. Song Qingshu and Chi Fong looked at her at the same time. Indigo Phoenix continued to say, "The golden rippling flower is extremely poisonous. The body of the person who is poisoned is also poisonous. Even if you touch it accidentally, you will be poisoned. Who would dare to chop his body into pieces? Let alone let the dogs eat it. Senior brother is not dead yet." Chi Fong wiped her tears and asked in surprise. Indigo Phoenix shook her head. From Wan Gui's reaction just now, young hero D should be dead. However, his body might not be damaged yet. Song Qingshu frowned and said in a deep voice, "Wait for me." As soon as he finished his sentence, he returned to the Wan residence. Indigo Phoenix could not help but exclaim, "Prince Song's Qin Gong now might not even be comparable to Master at his peak." Zhou Zhirua could not help but frown as she thought of the beautiful lady in the Forbidden City. Not long after, Song Qingshu came out again. He was holding on to a man who was dressed like a guard. He said in a deep voice, "After they killed Diyun, they abandoned him in the forest at the outskirts of the city. This man will lead us to him." Song Qingshu did not look for Wan Gue this time. Although Wan Gue was bad to the core, he was still strong-willed. It would not be easy to find out the whereabouts of Diyun's body from him. Moreover, Song Qingshu did not want to destroy Wan Gue so quickly. He could only destroy a person by giving him hope and making him despair. Therefore, he found another confidant of Wan Gue and performed the soul transfer technique on him to find out the whereabouts of Diyun. Just in case, it was better to capture him to lead the way. Hearing the commotion in the Prime Minister's residence getting louder and louder, it was obvious that many experts and guards were rushing in this direction. Indigo Phoenix was impressed. Wan Gui's shrill scream had alerted the guards in the Prime Minister's residence. Now, the Prime Minister's residence was heavily guarded. Song Qingshu had brought a person back as though he had entered an uninhabited place. With someone leading the way, the group soon found the location of Diyun's body. Song Qingshu sighed faintly as he noticed that all the plants within 3 meters had withered and there were no snakes, insects, rats, or ants. Looking at the yellowed ground in front of her, Chi Fong seemed to feel something. She bit her lips and wanted to dig it up. Chapter 1175. Perhaps the poison of the golden rippling flower was too strong, but Diyun's appearance was still the same as when he was alive. There were no signs of damage at all. "Senior brother." Chi Fong choked when she saw the familiar face. She wanted to pounce on him, but was stopped by Indigo Phoenix and Zhou Zhirua. "Senior brother, it's all my fault." Chi Fong slumped to the ground and started sobbing. "Take care of her. I'll be back soon." After Song Qingshu gave his orders, he flew towards Linen City like a wisp of green smoke. My condolences. Zhou Zhuo was touched by the deep friendship between them. She stroked Qi Fang's hair and comforted her. Indigo Phoenix squatted down and comforted her. After a while, Song Qingshu returned with a heavy coffin on his shoulder. We can't let Brother D's body be exposed in the wilderness. Let's bury him first, Song Qingshu said in a deep voice. Qi Fang's eyes were red from crying. She nodded and made way for him. Zhou Zhuo was shocked when she saw Song Qingshu reaching out to carry Di Yun, who was buried in the soil. Be careful. Song Qingshu shook his head. Don't worry. I'm not afraid of the golden rippling flower anymore. Moreover, I should send Brother Di off for the last time. Di Yun was staying in his hometown in Hemp Shop. If Song Qingshu had not brought him out, he would not have ended up like this. Song Qingshu felt guilty when he thought of this. Qi Fang choked when she saw Song Qingshu carrying Di Yun out of the mud pit despite the dirt and poison. Thank you. Song Qingshu sighed. He cleaned up Di Yun's body and changed him into new clothes. Finally, he placed him in the coffin gently. Just as he was planning to find a good place to bury him, Qi Fang opened her mouth and said, I want to help Senior Brother's coffin to be buried in our hometown. Senior Brother, he must want to go back to Hemp Shop the most. Song Qingshu originally wanted to dissuade her, but when he heard the latter part of her sentence, he couldn't help but feel a lump in his throat. He gave up the idea of persuading her. That's good too. Fallen leaves return to their roots. You should go back, but you have to take care of the child alone. Don't worry. I'm also a Jianghu person. Moreover, little sister Zhuo has taught me the martial arts of the Amei faction, Qi Fang said with her lips pursed. At this time, Indigo Phoenix said, this time a few sisters from the cult came to Linen with me. Originally, I was going to send them back to the headquarters in Yunnan to handle some matters. Since it's on the way to Hemp Shop, I'll let them accompany Miss Qi so that we can look after each other on the way. Just as Qi Fang was about to decline, Song Qingshu decided for her and said, That's great. It's settled then. Qi Fang had no choice but to say, Thank you, and thank you, cult leader Lon. Everything that had happened tonight had really taken a huge toll on her mind. Now that she had relaxed, her vision immediately darkened and she fainted. Fortunately, Song Qingshu, who was next to her, had sharp eyes and quick hands, and caught her. Facing Zhou Zhuo and Indigo Phoenix's concerned gaze, Song Qingshu checked her pulse and answered, I'm fine. I'm just overjoyed and sorrowful. I'll be fine after a good sleep. Only then did the two women heave a sigh of relief. Indigo Phoenix said, My place of residence is not far from the city. Let's go there and settle these first. Looking at the coffin, Song Qingshu nodded and said, That's good too. This thing is too conspicuous. It's not convenient to bring it in and out of Linen City. Subsequently, Song Qingshu carried the coffin, Zhou Zhuo carried the water spinach, and Indigo Phoenix supported Qi Fang. The group of them left the forest quietly. As for the guard who was captured to lead the way, Song Qingshu had already interrogated him and found out that he was one of Di Yun's accomplices. Therefore, he left him in the pit that Di Yun was in previously. Cult leader Lan, how did you get caught by Wan Gui? Song Qingshu finally had the time to ask about some things. Io, don't call me cult leader Lan. If that person finds out, I'll be in deep trouble. Indigo Phoenix smiled coquettishly. Just call me Little Phoenix from now on. Song Qingshu knew that she was talking about Dongfang Muxue. As Indigo Phoenix was Dongfang Muxue's concubine, there was no need for him to be distant with her. All right then, Little Phoenix, how did you get caught by Wan Gui? Hearing that he had changed the way he addressed her, Indigo Phoenix smiled happily. However, when she heard his doubts, she said in a depressed tone, It's all because of you, my enemy. Noticing the coldness hidden in Zhou Zhuo's smile, Song Qingshu smiled embarrassedly and said, Little Phoenix, you can eat whatever you want, but you can't say whatever you want. Indigo Phoenix looked at Zhou Zhuo and smiled. It's my master. She heard that something happened to you and killed a few eunuchs in a rage. At this point, Song Qingshu frowned. He was bothered by Dongfang Muxue's behavior. However, she was the cult leader of the demonic cult, and had developed a ruthless personality. Indigo Phoenix continued. She wanted to go down south personally, but now that the Imperial Court and the 3 border defenses are at war, if she were to leave, the Imperial Court would be without a leader and Wu Sangue would be able to take over. By then, all your hard work over the years would go down the drain. Master said that you're blessed and you won't die so easily. If she were to come back safely and find out that she had lost her base, who knows how she would blame her? Song Qingshu nodded. She did a good job. If she were to abandon the big picture, I would be crying right now. Indigo Phoenix smiled. Master also said that you would understand her. Oh yes, Fei Yin was crying and asking to see you. However, she is Master's right-hand man now. Now that the war is in a critical situation, many things can't be done without her. Coincidentally, I'm quite free and I'm good at using poison. Hence, Master sent me down south to look for you. At the same time, I wanted to see if I could find the antidote for the golden ripple flower. Thinking about Chu Fian, the weird little girl, Song Qingshu felt a sense of warmth in his heart. I thought that since Wang Gui was the one who used the golden ripple flower, I should get the antidote from him. Hence, I snuck into the Prime Minister's residence under the cover of the night. However, I didn't expect that brat to be so cunning. He even set up a trap in the bedroom. I wasn't paying attention and fell into the trap. You know what happened after that? Indigo Phoenix was enraged as she talked about it. She was a terrifying presence in the martial world. She didn't expect to fall into the hands of a playboy. If it wasn't for Song Qingshu, she might have lost her chastity. By then, she would be too ashamed to continue living. Looking at her pouting and sulking, Song Qingshu couldn't help but laugh. Oh yes, you just came from Beijing. You should be clear about the recent situation. How's the situation at the Golden Snake Camp after I got into trouble? Chapter 1176. The Golden Snake Camp isn't doing too well. Indigo Phoenix's first sentence made Song Qingshu worried. Not long after the incident, Li Kashio spread the news and led the army north to annex the territory of the Golden Snake Camp. Fortunately, the Ninth Princess, Qingqing, and the others managed it well and stopped Li Kashio's attack in time. However, when the news of the incident spread, the morale of the Golden Snake Camp began to waver. Indigo Phoenix continued. Song Qingshu cursed inwardly. Usually, he ran all over the world like a mysterious dragon. Usually, he let Ah Jiao disguise himself to be in charge of the Golden Snake Camp. Now that this matter had happened, the matter of disguising himself as a substitute would probably be exposed. The Ninth Princess appeared in the face of the Golden Snake Camp and managed to stabilize the morale of the army. However, after a long time, the intelligence from all sides will inevitably make people suspicious. According to the latest news, the Ninth Princess can't control the situation any longer. She can only defend and resist the attack of Li Kashio's army. Indigo Phoenix was Dongfang Mushua's confidant, so she obviously knew about the disguise. It seems that I have to go back as soon as possible. Although he did not witness it, Song Qingshu could imagine how anxious Ijio and Xia Qingqing were during this period of time. On one hand, they had to worry about their own lives, and, on the other hand, they had to resist the fierce attacks of the veteran General Li Kashio. What about Jia Sherdao? Zhou Zhiruo had already learned about the identity of a young master in the luxurious gown from Song Qingshu. She also knew what Song Qingshu had seen and heard in the Jia's mansion. What a headache! Song Qingshu frowned. If he just left and the Jia's mansion found out that Jia Baoyu was missing, wouldn't there be an uproar? It wouldn't be long before Jia Baoyu's death was found out. By then, wouldn't the person who impersonated Jia Baoyu be the biggest suspect? Although Song Qingshu's disguise was secretive, there was no such thing as an imposter. Jia Sherdao was the third most powerful person in the Southern Song dynasty and could mobilize the power of the entire country. Plus, the Isle of Heroes was a super-intelligence organization that knew everything in the Jianghu. Song Qingshu never underestimated the intelligence of his enemies. He believed that Jia Sherdao would find out about him sooner or later. Now, he and the Prime Minister Machi Suo were already at each other's throats, and the Golden Snake Camp was also fighting fiercely with Li Kashio. If such a powerful enemy like Jia Sherdao were to appear out of nowhere, wouldn't it mean that he would completely break with the Southern Song dynasty? Previously, he hadn't been in a hurry to kill Wan Gui and Ma Chi-chun. Apart from torturing them slowly, another reason was their identities. After all, Ma Chi-chun was the prime minister of the Southern Song dynasty. He represented the face of the imperial court. If he killed them directly, how could the Southern Song dynasty let the matter rest? Therefore, Song Qingshu planned to torture Wan Gui while using political means to oust Ma Chi-ju from his position as prime minister. Once he was no longer the prime minister of the Southern Song dynasty, it wouldn't cause any disturbance even if he were to be killed or dismembered. However, if Jia Sherdao and Ma Chi-chun were forced to join forces to deal with him, the power of the two would be enough to influence the Southern Song dynasty's policy. By then, his enemy would not be Ma Chi-chun, but the entire Southern Song dynasty. Song Qingshu's main enemy was the unprecedentedly powerful Mongolia. He didn't want to have an internal conflict between the Han people first. Moreover, the Golden Snake Camp might not be able to deal with both Li Kashio and the Southern Song dynasty at the same time. I shouldn't have disguised myself as Jia Baoyu. Song Qingshu regretted it. However, he knew that there was nothing he could do at the time. If he hadn't disguised himself as Jia Baoyu, he would have died on the island. He wouldn't have had the chance to learn the Taishan Sutra, let alone return to the Central Plains. Soon, they arrived at the secret base of the Five Immortals sect. After putting down Di Yun's coffin and putting Qi Feng to sleep, Song Qingshu told Zhou Zhuo about his thoughts. Zhou Zhuo frowned and said, "Yes, we have to think of a foolproof plan." The Indigo Phoenix, who was at the side, laughed. "Both of you don't have to frown so much. Everything has its pros and cons. Although impersonating Jia Baoyu is risky, his special identity can bring immeasurable benefits if it is used well." Song Qingshu smiled bitterly and said, "I know that, but the Golden Snake Camp is in a critical situation. I have to go there as soon as possible." Zhou Zhuo said, "How about this? We will stay in Lin and for 2 more days and see if we can find a way to make the best of both worlds. If it doesn't work, we will pretend to be Jia Baoyu and run away from home." "That's the only way." Song Qingshu nodded. "Jiao and Qingqing should be able to hold on for 1 or 2 days. I have been out for a long time. I have to go back to the Jia residence to avoid being exposed." Song Qingshu looked at Qi Feng, who was sleeping soundly on the bed, and said to Indigo Phoenix, "Little Phoenix, I'll have to trouble you to take care of Qi Feng. If there's any news, go to the Red Sleeve courtyard in the city to look for Zhuo." Blue Phoenix smiled sweetly and said, "Don't worry, I will send young master's little lover home safely." Song Qingshu blushed and said, "Don't talk nonsense. She is a married woman." Blue Phoenix pouted. She thought to herself, "Why didn't you think that Zhou Zhuo was married when you pressed her down on the table?" However, she wouldn't bring it up in front of Zhou Zhuo. Hence, she smiled ambiguously. Song Qingshu brought Zhou Zhuo to Lin and City awkwardly. On the way, Zhou Zhuo asked thoughtfully, "Did something happen in the Prime Minister's residence? Why do I feel that all of you have such strange expressions?" As the saying went, if you confess, you will be lenient. If you resist, you will be sent home for the new year. Song Qingshu did not dare to tell her the truth and could only reply casually. Fortunately, Zhou Zhuo did not continue to ask. Instead, she sighed and said, "Jiao and Qingqing have to take care of the Golden Snake Camp and fight on the battlefield. It has been hard on them these days." "That's right." Song Qingshu also let out a long sigh. "Sometimes, I feel like I'm too irresponsible as a hands-off boss. I let you handle all the tedious government affairs, but I'm free and unfettered outside." Zhou Zhuo held his hand and said softly, "Qingshu, why do you have to belittle yourself? Others don't know, but do you think that we sisters don't know your hard work? If it wasn't for you maneuvering around the various countries, how could the Golden Snake Camp have such a good external situation and develop in peace? How could the Qin Kingdom and the Jin Kingdom be secretly controlled by us? Although you would hook up with some women everywhere you went, I turned a blind eye to you because you've been dancing on a tightrope. Song Ching Shu was surprised. Jiruo, I didn't know you were so magnanimous. Jiruo rolled her eyes at him and said, if I'm not magnanimous, do you think you won't fool around? It's better to be magnanimous than to be disliked by others because of jealousy. Of course, if you just want to be a sect leader or something, I will never allow you to find another woman. But now that you want to conquer the world, it's the time when you need all kinds of help. As long as it can help you conquer the world, it's okay to have more sisters. I'm not afraid to tell you that I've dreamed of being an empress since I was a child. Song Qingshu smiled and reached out to hold her slender waist. Aren't you afraid that directly saying what you want will arouse my disgust? You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.